And thank you, and good morning, Olaya, and good morning, everyone. Yes, Olaya, if you want to do the quick overview of the ConnectCenter for a few minutes, and then I'll jump right in for the rest of the hour.
Perfect. Okay. Well, you and Paul.
Paul, well, no, yes, of course.
Yes. Okay. Let me. What I want to do really quickly, because of this, it seems like we have a long time today, but we really don't. It goes so fast. Yeah. I just wanted to do a really quick overview of the APH ConnectCenter. If you're not familiar with it, our website is aphconnectcenter.org. And that's kind of like the hub for the American Printing House ConnectCenter. And when you go to aphconnectcenter.org, you come to our main page. And our main page, we have a couple of slider areas at the top. So the first one talks about our information and referral line. The phone number for our information and referral line is 1-800-232-5463. That's 1-800-232-5463. I will put that also in the chat in just a little bit. And the phones are staffed from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. But you can also email us at ConnectCenter, one word, at aph.org. If you have any questions, need any help, are trying to find an answer to, we get all kinds of questions all the time. And so with Alan Lovell is our INR line coordinator. He's been with APH for over 25 years. So if there's something you want to know, Alan's the guy who's going to help you find it. And so please take advantage of that service. And that service is available again, like I said, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And there will be somebody to answer the phone. And if for some reason they are on the phone with another consumer, then you can always leave a message and you will get a call back. So please take advantage of that. We also have on our main page here, our Connect calendar. If you are not aware, we have a calendar of events that serves the field. So if you have something that you know is going on in your area, you can input it or submit it for us to get it onto the calendar for you. And you can, I'm opening the calendar right now so everybody can see what it looks like. So when you go to our ConnectCenter calendar, you can see the events in a list by month or by day. So I just opened it up by month, and you can see here what's today. Today is the 5th. And you can see, of course, we have the National Transition Conversation listed, but then there's also something called the ins and outs of sight loss later in life from 7 to 8 p.m. And then there's a get up and go. So when you put your cursor over the title of the event that is listed in that date, information gets pulled up on a side window and lets you know what it's about and how you can get involved and join the event that's happening. So here, this is something that's open to the entire field. Please take advantage of it. We use it all the time. People are always adding events to the calendar. So again, this calendar belongs to the field, and we want everybody to be able to find out what's going on, what your agencies are doing. And then we also have our directory of services, which our directory of services, I believe, and Paul, you can correct me, but I think it started in the 1920s. And it at that time it was printed, so it looked like a big phone book for those of you who are old enough to remember phone books. We don't have those anymore, or if we do, they're little bitty tiny things. We used to use the phone books as like booster seats, I remember as a kid. So but now it's all electronic, and we have about I believe it was 6,000 agencies listed in the directory of services. Your agency, you can apply also to get your agency listed in the directory of services. It is broken down by state. And so when individuals are looking for help or information about blindness or services in your state, if you are listed, you'll show up in there and people will be able to find you and get a hold of you. So that's a big part of our directory of services there. Now, in the right-hand corner, there's something that, from what I understand, is called a hamburger. It's 3 lines, like a little bit. When you click on it, it has a drop-down menu. So you can see, once you do that, you can get to Career Connect, Family Connect, Vision Aware, the National Transition Conversation, the Transition Hub, and then our archived webinars. And so I just clicked on Family Connect. And just wanted to show you all what that looks like. We have Family Connect. We have toolbar that talks about, and it has a drop-down menu about webinars, blogs, and about Family Connect. After the diagnosis, there's some resources there. After your child gets a diagnosis and you're trying to figure out what to do, who to contact. You can also browse by age. So in particular for us, as we are talking about transition-aged youth, you can, if you're on Family Connect, you can find information about, if you click on teenagers, that's about what that fits right into our transition age youth. So there's also a tab about education, a tab that addresses areas in multiple disabilities, and a tab for assistive technology. So it's just chock full of information. I mean, you can get lost for days looking for lots and lots of good information here for you, lost within the website. And so there's Family Connect, and I'm going back to the ConnectCenter website so that I can get to Vision Aware. And Vision Aware has information right now. We are focusing on diabetes and vision loss, in addition to many other things, but that is the current webinar series that we are putting on, which makes Vision Aware very unique. There's not a lot of that going on out in the field as far as focusing on a webinar that is being driven by a registered nurse who is also a diabetes educator, and is familiar with blindness and visual impairment. So she does a wonderful job helping people understand how to give themselves their medicines, how to use their blood monitoring systems and things like that. So there's a lot of information here about your eye condition, information for seniors, emotional support, working life, everyday living. We also, again, you can get to directory of services from here, but one of the big things we have here that was brought to with the support of the Reader's Digest Partners for Sight Foundation, we have a Getting Started guide. And this Getting Started guide can be downloaded in an electronic format, or you can give us a call or email us if you want a printed copy. We can always mail you a copy as well. It is available in English and in Spanish.
All right.
Yep. And the last one, I'm going to go to, I'll go to Career Connect. And Richard's going to talk a lot more about that.
I will. Absolutely.
But so that's well, that's not the last website, but that is, that's where I will hand this over to Richard.
All right. Just grabbing my notes here. Good morning, everybody. Olaya, thank you. Paul Schroeder, welcome. Welcome everyone to APH Annual Meeting Week and the ConnectCenter, and we're more than happy to have all of you join us today from the comfort of school, work, your homes, your offices. It's all about mentoring. We've planned this for several months. I want to welcome our panelists, Steve, Derek, Kyan, Neva, Kristen. You're going to be hearing from them in the next hour, and really exciting stuff. And so what I'll do is I'll give a quick synopsis of what we're going to be doing, and I mean really quick. And Steve, if you want to join me right now to kind of give an overview of what to expect in the next hour, you're more than welcome to come on mic. But it's all about peer mentoring. At the end of this hour, Paul and I are going to talk about how APH plays into mentoring and why we're doing this. But just to give our audience an overview, we wanted to really put out there to all of you, to our VR professionals, vocational rehabilitation professionals, teachers of the visually impaired, educators, all you transition specialists, directors, special place in my heart, because I've been there and I know how important these programs are, and we all tackle and struggle with mentoring And why is mentoring so important? As a blind adult, I can give you hours of how I've been mentored and how I have been a mentor to others and how I've been a mentee. And so it's a very, very intense subject, and we're going to cover it from all angles in the next 2 days. Namely, this morning or afternoon, for those of you on the East Coast, we're going to talk about peer mentoring as it pertains to policy, technical system, and program design. PolicyWorks, Steve and his group are going to share with us some of the goals and outcomes and practices on that. And in the second hour, Kyan Flint is going to moderate how peer mentoring works and can best be worked through the vocational rehabilitation system, and talking with some of those experts on the subject and how we can really work and get the peer mentoring topic involved. Steve, do you want to add anything to what we're talking about today?
Thank you, Richard. No, you did a great job. I'm very excited about today, especially. The first part's going to be sort of technical, a lot of stuff about information and resources that are available, and the law, the pre-ets, and the funding and VR and how all that works. So that'll be great. And then we get to hear from some of the programs that are operating now. So I'm really glad to be here. I've been looking forward to this for months, and have enjoyed working with everyone to put this together.
Yeah, and thank you, Steve, and thank you and your colleagues for joining Catherine and Olaya and I and Paul in some circumstances. Since late June, we've met every Wednesday morning to put this together. So we hope you will have some excellent takeaways, and please do ask us questions throughout the presentations. And if you do have to come and go, know that these are being recorded, but it's awesome to see so many of you in the audience. And I haven't even looked at the panelist list. I'll look at that later on when I'm not talking. Or the audience, I mean. What I want to mention is that what we're doing here with the ConnectCenter and Career Connect is a part of our national transition conversation. For those of you who joined us last year, we launched the national transition conversation to really address the needs of transition programs, employment, work experience. It was something that Joe Stretchy and I worked on before he departed the ConnectCenter, and pardon me, in APH last summer. And when I inherited it, we thought, this is a really good subject matter, and we have a listserv, and we host webinars like we're hosting today very frequently. And in the next year, you're going to be seeing a lot more on our national transition conversation. So I just want to put that out there as you hear us call it the NTC, or National Transition Conversation. That's our commitment to the field. I'm going to talk to you for a few minutes about Career Connect before Paul joins me, and in between we'll show a very quick video. I do want to see if those of you who are in the audience, if you could raise your hands if you have visited Career Connect in the last 3 to 6 months. If you have visited our Career Connect webpage, specifically Career Connect, in the last 3 to 6 months, raise your hands. And Olaya, if you could tell me who's raised their hands. And if you haven't, then I know I need to talk to you some more. And I'm pretty good at that.
Okay, wow. It looks like so far, everyone who can raise their hands. So we have some people who are on the phone, so they can't raise their hands, but
sure, that's okay.
Everybody in attendance so far that I can see has raised their hands. That's wonderful. We have over 100 attendees here. So so far, oh, okay, now I'm getting to some where there's not, but I would say
a majority, 2/3.
Oh, yeah, I would say at least half.
Well, then my job is done, and good night. I'm kidding. No, I really want to share out Career Connect, and one of the more exciting things that I think we're able to share, and thank you, Olaya and Paul and everyone. For the past year, Richard, have been on contract doing this kind of as a moonlighting thing, and so next week I step into the digital content manager role of Career Connect full time. So if you thought we were doing good last year, things are going to even be better in the next next year. And I'm going to explain to you what we have on tap for Career Connect. So for those of you out there who are new to Career Connect and wondering what it's all about, I'll tell you, as a rehabilitation counselor 20 years ago, I was over the moon when I heard about this site. So I was a fanboy from not maybe its inception, but early on when it was with AFB. And there were so many great articles and blogs and videos up there from the past and that we're updating, but it even goes beyond that. Now, let me stop and tell you that because some of you are probably wondering the same thing I wondered. A few years ago, as it transitioned to APH, I as well thought Career Connect went away and I couldn't find it. And I said, oh man, what happened? And I just went on about my business. And Career Connect has a unique website. If you go to APHcareerconnect.org and then put that on your homepage, you'll never lose it again. So we're no longer careerconnect.org, but we're APHcareerconnect.org. And that's one of several ways that you can get to our homepage, bookmark it, and follow us on social media. I say that because I too, and many people have reached out over the past year going, well, what happened? And I said, no, it's right here. The other good way you can get to the ConnectCenter, because Olaya and Catherine will make sure I say it, is go to our APHconnectcenter.org page, because we track a lot of the visits to all our sites, whether it's Family Connect, Vision Aware, Transition Hub, Braille Bug, and all the new things we're doing, as well as Career Connect, to APHconnectcenter.org. So those are one of two ways you can get there. Let's see. I'll share the mentoring story I have just before Paul and I talk. So Career Connect continues to be a thriving resource for transition age youth, for job seekers, for VR counselors, for teachers of the visually impaired, special educators. We want it to be a very tangible website that you can go to and visit. We don't want it to be static and something you just think about last minute. So what we're doing to address and make Career Connect as relevant as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago is we're doing a lot more blogs. We're putting blogs up there from the perspectives of college students, of job seekers talking to us about what it is like searching for a job during the pandemic. How do you do interviews over Zoom? How do you make it a real meaningful experience to authentically interview and job search during times like this? So we try to make it modern and relevant from people of all ages. And we want to hear from you. If you are someone out there who has an idea for a blog, send it my way. I'll make sure I'll put my email in the chat box there, or if Olaya, if you want to put my email in the chat box, we want it to be a very tangible resource. So likewise, the other blog we did, thanks to Ann Kwong and her associates, we really wanted to address cultural diversity and the transition age population. And no one better than Ann Kwong, Daisy, Giovanni, and others to talk about their experiences as youth with disabilities from all walks of life. And that's a 4-part blog that we featured in March, and it received a lot of praise and a lot of recognition. So we want to direct you to that blog as well as many, many other blogs. The other thing we're starting to do is we've done a lot of webinars on PREETs, pre-employment transition services through WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that you Rehab folks have heard about and teachers have heard about. We had thanks to Shannon McVoy up in Michigan for hosting 2 webinars on what is PREETs 101, the nuts and bolts, and making it something that you can understand, that's digestible. It's a really good learning opportunity, training, so that as you folks in the VR field take on transition age youth as young as age 14, we understand why it's so important. So those webinars are up there on our YouTube page. Okay, look at my notes here. I want to give a shout out to one of the things that we did last November when I started with APH, and thanks to Olaya and folks for letting us do this, is I felt that there was a void and not having enough people giving us feedback. So we established our Career Connect Advisory Committee, and we've got some brilliant people out there. And I fear that if I say one name, I'll miss the other names, but there are so many that you've got Shannon up in Michigan, you've got Don out in New York, you've got Allison in Idaho, Allison up in Ohio, Angie, Kat, Cayenne, Lori, Greg, and if I miss Amy, all of you have, all of our advisory committee members have contributed in countless hours. We meet quarterly. Sue down in Florida, Sue Glazer, we've gathered the experts in transition and employment and Voc Rehab, and they've helped us put webinars together. We're planning a host of a bunch of other things coming up, more webinars. And so I just want to thank all of you out there, our advisory committee members. I told them from the start, you're not just here to advise, you're going to roll up your sleeves and help Career Connect be as an amazing resource as it should be. So thank you all for your hard work. And I couldn't leave this presentation while acknowledging all the hard work that they have done. So thank you. So the other thing that I want to mention that's coming up for Career Connect. So we've got, and I was talking to Olaya and Paul and Catherine about this earlier, and I think one of the things that I want to do with Career Connect, I want to interview more blind professionals, more doctors, lawyers, teachers, people who are doing art, people who are working in a variety of fields that we're familiar with and fields that we are not so familiar with. And if you are a blind professional out there and you feel you have something to contribute, I want to interview you. Now, what we'll continue to do is our video success stories, which you will find up on Career Connect. And you'll see interviews from Russell Schaefer, our chairman of the board, from Walmart. You'll see interviews coming up from Mona Mikara, who's out in Boston, who's a blind chemistry and amazing lady doing brilliant things. Cole Hartman up in Washington, and a variety of other folks we've interviewed, that Joe has interviewed and that I have interviewed. And those are up there on our YouTube page. What I want to draw you to is something we'll probably be calling Career Connections, where I will be interviewing folks once or twice a month in real time. So we'll make these webinars, and through these webinars, not only will I be interviewing people, but you, our audience, will be able to ask questions as well. And I think that'll allow us to get far more interviews up and online. So whether you attend in person and or ask a question in advance or ask a question during the chat portion of our hour talk, we want to interview more blind people. So again, if you have something you want to contribute, if you are someone you think who's worthy of being interviewed, let me know. We're going to be starting that really soon. So thank you for that. And I think that'll be another great resource for students in the classroom. Some of the other things that we've done with the Career Connect site is we revamped our Job Seekers Toolkit a little over a year ago. We have that up on PDF on Career Connect. You can pull that down. What we hope to do in the coming year is to turn it into a project where you can pull down particular modules and take those modules and use them with your students, whether it's on disclosure, how to interview, matching your right job fit. And right now it's in one document, but we want to put it into a learning management system where students and teachers and professionals can identify where their needs are most needed and use those modules. So that's what we're hoping to do in the future. We also have our maintaining employment guides, so those who are having transferable skills, who are in job retention. We have that document up there on Career Connect as well. Let's see. I talked about the National Transition Conversation. What I'll put in the chat is the link to our National Transition Listserv. That is a force for teachers and VR counselors across the United States to engage, to network, to share resources that are transition specific. And I'll put the subscription, it's through groups.io, and it's a real easy process. It's not full of a lot of graphics, so it's real text friendly.
I just put that in the chat, Richard.
Thank you, Olaya. One of the last things I'll talk about here, because I realize it's already 36 past the hour and we will take a break at top of the hour and then come back at 15 minutes, is our transition hub. Now, if you join us this Friday in the 2 o'clock hour Eastern, Olaya and I will be giving a real in-depth overview of our transition hub. What I will say now is if you go to APHConnectCenter.org and look for transition hub, you will find it. And I don't know if you'll put that up on the screen, Olaya, but what that is, it's a searchable database. It's a one-stop database with over 40 programs that are specific to transition age youth who are wanting to learn how to become independent and or find their first ever work experience. Up on the Transition Hub website, you can find, and this is in large thanks to the Give Me Family Foundation, who has supported this through a grant, and our partnerships with the Perkins, AER, and Vision Serve Alliance, and putting that together. I'll tell you that when I did the research for the Transition Hub and getting partner agencies such as state agencies for the blind and nonprofits who have summer programs and seasonal programs, I called over 100 agencies and talked to over hundreds or dozens of you in March and April, and it was really cool to reconnect with folks who didn't know that Career Connect was still alive, and that led to a great deal of presentations over the summer. So I think we really are getting the word out there with Career Connect. Now, if you're watching now and you said, well, I haven't been heard about you talking to my students, that's fine. Reach out to me and I'll make sure you get on our agenda. We got so many lined up this month. So everywhere we can go on Zoom, we'll be there. So the Transition Hub, searchable database, you can look for programs locally, programs that are overnight, programs that are day programs only. You've got programs in Hawaii, Florida, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Idaho, Washington State, Michigan, and elsewhere, and in New York, and over 40 locations. The grant identified 35. We were overachievers, right, Olaya? And we hit 40 this year. So
Yes.
it's my goal when I come on board next week to really double that in the next year. So if you haven't heard from me, you will be hearing from me. And if you are someone who has contributed to the Transition Hub, and you want to update it, we'll show you how to do that, and we'll talk about that on Friday. It's a really easy process. Again, we want it to be a tangible resource for students, their folks, teachers, and Voc Rehab specialists to look at this database, similar to our directory of services on what's out there. And it's a very cool resource, and I loved working on it. Let's see. In just a minute, I'm going to have Olaya show us a video, and then Paul and I will talk about our role in mentoring as an APH Connect Center. Yeah, so Olaya, if you want to queue up the, so what the video we're going to show now is the get out there and get after it. And Olaya, correct me if I'm wrong, these videos were created about the time you started and about 6 months before I joined the Career Connect and Connect Center. And these videos in large part were an answer to, at the start of the pandemic, a lot of our blind kids and young adults weren't getting graduation, and a lot of the celebrities were doing graduation shout outs to high school seniors. And we thought, hey, you know, the class of 2020 needs something similar. So thanks to Joe, Olaya, Ann, and others within APH, we reached out and got some really cool folks out there to give a shout out to our blind students. But beyond that, these are really cool, motivating short videos that really kind of kickstart your students, get them really intrigued and empowered. So I thought we would show to you a 2.5-minute video, get out there and get after it, as to wrap up my talk. And then Paul, if you want to get ready, you and I can talk about mentoring in about 2 minutes. So thank you, everybody.
Oh, okay. Oh, hold 1 second. All right. There is greatness inside of you.
There you go.
Is that one okay? All right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I guess a blind climber isn't something most venture capitalists would have invested in, but I've been making it work for 20 years.
I am a professional stage and screen actor, writer, and director. I'm also the founder of Access Acting Academy, which is the first ever professional actor training program for blind and low vision artists.
And I lead candidate and employee accessibility at Amazon.
I'm a film composer of over 130 films, including the Emmy-nominated film Beneath the Ink.
You might have caught me on NBC, CBS, CW, Apple TV+.
Climbing the 7 summits and kayaking rivers and skiing and mountain biking.
My name is Megan Monty.
I am Marilee Talkington.
My name's Eric Weinmeier.
My name is Stephen Letness.
And I happen to be legally blind.
And I happen to be visually impaired.
I also happen to be blind from retinitis pigmentosa.
Blind guys don't climb Everest alone. They hook up with a great team.
Find a mentor and a sponsor to guide you and champion you throughout your career.
If the world does not have a vision for you, you must create that vision for yourself.
If there's something you're afraid of or that you fear, then you owe it to yourself and no one else to go after it, to go get it.
Make sure you connect with the right people and you say yes to the opportunities that get thrown in front of you.
Push yourself, push others, push the limit. You're going to face barriers and discrimination. I did too.
Pick up the phone, start calling experts in the field that you're interested in. And that's a little scary, but just go for it, right?
Push through it. Know your rights. Know your worth.
Because there will be lessons learned for everything you do thereafter.
The only thing that can happen is you can be embarrassed.
Do not wait for the world to catch up with what you know to be true about yourself, which is that there is greatness inside of you.
And you just might get what you want.
Congratulations again, and I cannot wait to work with you one day. Way to go, class of 2020.
Congratulations to all our 2020 graduates from the...
All right. I love to watch that.
Olaya.
I always just get chilled.
I know. I want to jump out of my seat and go like follow these guys. Like, okay, what are you doing now? Thank you, Olaya. And Paul, just before you come on, I mentioned earlier, and I want to share this really cool antidote. And I want to give a shout out to all my folks in California, early risers on the West Coast. You guys are amazing. I hope you have your beverage of choice. For me, it's coffee. I recently left my day job as program coordinator running a program called Careers Plus here in Sacramento, where I'm remotely based. And at our wrap-up call last Thursday, I had 3 young ladies join us, and Lisa, if you're listening, Brandy, if you're listening, I hope you can echo this. They had never all been at the call together, and one was like a high school senior, one was college going to UCLA, and the other one was in her early 30s. And these young ladies, I had in my mind, I really want these 3 ladies to connect. And it was like just kind of an answer from above saying, you know what, they're all going to be on your call. So the one high school senior is just nervous about going to college and didn't know if she wants to go to a training center right after high school and or go to college. So the college student says, hey, high school senior, give me your email and let's talk. I can talk to you about what are the choices I made and why it was important to go to a training center and how I'm thriving at UCLA. And likewise, the young lady in her early 30s reached out to our college students, says, hey, I know you're looking about work experience and what it's like after college. Let's connect. And just having those 3 ladies on that call was just how mentoring works in different ways, peer mentoring, naturally, organically. And I think we'll be exploring that today and throughout the conference and in times to come. So I just thought that was a brilliant thing. And it was a really good way for me to segue out of my current job. And that was like the gift of all gifts. So I just thought I'd share that. Paul Schroeder, are you with us?
I am here. Richard, how are you?
Good morning. Val is our Vice President of Government and Community Affairs. Did I mess that up or did I get that right?
Well, yeah, sure.
Okay. Great.
Titles are always a funny thing. I will say you and I both have some tricky parts of our last name. We were joking about this yesterday with
we did, yes.
Various ways to say Rueda.
Right.
And my name is also, for those of you who've known me for a while, and those of you who don't know me, it's a little tricky. It's it's spelled with an OE, but I pronounce it Schrader. It is also routinely pronounced Schroeder. In fact, in my own family, some say Schroeder and some say Schrader. So there's no there's no good answer for it. I'll answer to either one, but I do tend to say Schrader for that pronunciation. And if you're a German scholar, you'll know that neither one is correct. It's sort of in between. So there you go. And Richard informed us yesterday that his Micho might, his grandmother might say, you don't get it quite right, Micho either. So
yeah.
You're not rolling your R's.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
gotta roll
correct.
the R's. Anyway, I am delighted. I'm so excited for this conversation. This is an area that I care about. I joined APH last December, and almost from the outset, I kept saying, you know, I'd love to work with the ConnectCenter. These were programs that were part of my group when I worked for the American Foundation for the Blind, which was really the bulk of my career was spent there. And we developed these programs then. Of course, Career Connect, I think predates me at AFB. I know the directory does. I'm definitely not old enough to be back in the 1920s when, you're right, Olaya, when we launched that as a booklet or a large book. But the Career Connect, of course, I think might even predate my time at AFB, but it certainly was early on in those days. And so, but I am glad to be back connected with these programs that I love and value. And I think, you know, there's so much great information to provide through these programs. If it's okay with you, Richard, I just wanted to make a couple of quick points, and then
absolutely,
and then I know we'll be heading into a break shortly. I think most of everybody on this call probably knows that the American Printing House for the Blind was established to support educational needs of students, non-college students, so students in preschool, in K-12, and even in GEDs and things of that nature. So students non-post-secondary, which is a lot of words. But it's those students, to serve students really in elementary, high school, preschool. And that's been our history. That's what we were established to do in 1858 in the great Commonwealth of Kentucky, and with great support from the Commonwealth. And then eventually, or shortly thereafter, great support from the federal government, and kind of really standing in the shoes to deliver services funded through the federal government since 1879 to those students. And so for us, the launch of ConnectCenter, the addition of ConnectCenter really constitutes a new step in many ways, an effort to do outreach and provide support and information for individuals seeking employment, for individuals interested in independent living and independence with vision loss, et cetera. While those are not new for APH, I think serving that population or really working with that population is a little bit new for us. And so we're learning as we go. We've been delighted to have great people like Richard involved, and many others who were part of really providing these kinds of services and helping us focus. We will certainly talk a little bit about mentoring and what our role is going to be. And I think we're still working that out, and would love to hear from all of you about what you'd like us to do. We do know that through Career Connect, through the ConnectCenter, which of course is the parent of Career Connect, through the Transition Hub that Richard just mentioned, that we have a role to play in supporting programs at the state level, at the local level that are doing mentoring. And we very much want to do that. And so we want to hear from you, and that's part of what this conversation will help us do. The other thing I wanted to just take a minute to sort of talk about my experiences with mentoring. And I think we all have them. Richard, you talked briefly about yours. And, you know, I'm congenitally blind, so I lost my sight as an infant. And for me, although I went to a residential school for the blind, really the place where I kind of pegged my mentoring experience was going to early on in my life in college, going to conventions of the National Federation of the Blind and the American Council of the Blind, and learning from these tremendous accomplished adults who are blind, all kinds of things, but most important in a way about how to be a good, independent, functioning, active interested in the world, engaged in the world blind person. And I really credit both of those organizations and the individuals in those organizations with helping me do that, and having that opportunity early in college. And then in my first job, my first real career job, I worked in an office of advocacy in Ohio, and shout out to my Ohio friends here. I spent 6 years there, and again, had some really good colleagues, one in particular who was blind, and then some other colleagues with other disabilities, from whom I learned a lot about independence and about disability. And it was, you know, at that time, I'm old enough that at that time we were just in the process of working to get the Americans with Disabilities Act passed in 1990. And I got to play a role in advocating for that. And so such a great learning experience and a great opportunity to work with people on a very important legislative topic, and to learn a lot from those individuals with various disabilities about the issues involved in living independently and living fulfilling lives at that time. I mentioned that I was at AFB when we moved Career Connect and into an online web-based program. It used to be, we were joking about this, there's very few on this call who probably remember floppy disks, but we used to have a program called Career and Technology Information Bank on floppy disks. I'll just, you know, anyone throw in the chat if you remember floppy disks and have a great love and hate for those. And that's what the program was. It was a database on those disks. And then we moved it online. But it was very much a mentor program, right? It was rooted in connecting blind people with adults working in an area that they might be interested in. And that's really what it was. We moved it online, provided some additional information and other kinds of support. But at its heart, it was still that mentoring program. And when APH took it over, it had kind of moved away in many ways from the focus on mentoring, and it had moved much more to a focus on information, the job seeker toolkit, for example, that Richard talked about. And so we have continued to keep it focused as an information tool, as a way for individuals to really focus on job seeking and the issues around employment, and less about the connections with mentors. But we do, and that's the whole point of some of these conversations over the next few days, and then later this month, of course, we do want to talk about, you know, how we can help build mentor relationships and mentor programs where they're appropriate. And so that's a part of what we're going to be doing with Career Connect and the Transition Hub. And, you know, I think, Richard, that's a big part of what you're going to be doing in these interviews and video programs, where you're going to be helping to expose people to some of these talented individuals who are pursuing various kinds of jobs and activities. And, you know, as I always say to people, you know, if you want to climb a mountain, that's great, but you don't have to climb a mountain to be a really independent and creative and well-functioning blind person. It's not critical, it's not essential, it's not an essential task to do that. If you want to do it, great. But for many of us, just getting out and getting that first job is like climbing a mountain. And when you get to that summit, it is so awesome to have that opportunity, that experience. So we definitely want to hear your stories. We want to hear what we can do to help you find your path and to support the individuals you serve to find that path to that first job, to the next job, to the fulfillment that comes from a career. I have loved my career in the blindness field, and I have a great deal of respect for my colleagues who are in this field. And of course, I would love to help individuals find their own fields of work and engagement that they want to be able to pursue, whether it's in our community, in our field, or in something completely unrelated, and that's fine too, to be able to find that first job and that continuing career success and satisfaction. I'm going to stop there, and Richard, I'll be happy to answer your questions if you have any, or thoughts or things you want me to also say, but I'm just close by saying I'm delighted to have these programs here at the American Printing House for the Blind, and we are looking for ways to help grow and nurture these programs. So we're going to be doing a lot with Olaya and Richard and other parts of this team who are collectively who make up this thing called the ConnectCenter, which of course, as Olaya pointed out, does have other components as well. So we invite you to visit any or all of them.
Paul, thank you. And let me ask, we've got a few minutes. Our panelists, do you have any questions for Paul? Since you're our featured guest this morning, I give you all the opportunity if you want to ask Paul or I a question about what we've talked about.
Or we could have a conversation about floppy disks.
Yeah. No, I think. Yeah, no, we've got some great initiatives on everything we've talked about. And again, we want to be a very tangible connection to all of you. So reach out to us. We might even do some Career Connect or ConnectCenter open houses where we get feedback, because we really want to, moving forward here, and how we can best meet the needs of you and those you serve.
You know, I think that would be a cool idea, right? To just open up some opportunities to say, we're going to be available at this time. Come and pop into the Zoom or whatever, and give us your thoughts, converse, let us know what you're up to. If you've got some programs you want to talk about a little bit and get attention to, that would be great. I do want to invite people to put, to add your programs to the Transition Hub. It's you know, and it's going to be its own directory.
Yes.
It already is. And I think, you know, with the focus on transition that came about through the last reauthorization of the Rehabilitation Act, as part of WIOA, it is clear that currently Congress and the Rehabilitation Administration very much want to focus on young people, on youth, on transition age youth, and really putting an emphasis there in ensuring that the rehabilitation agencies are serving that population. And we want to do that too. We think that's a population that is so there's so many great opportunities. And so Transition Hub is one of the ways in which we're going to make sure that we're trying to help provide more information about programs, more exposure, more support, more awareness of these programs, and hopefully making sure that people know what's happening in their state, for example, or elsewhere, if they want to visit a program that's in a different state, and they have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, it's brilliant how so many programs exist and we don't know about them. And when you're a VR consumer and you're like, wow, I could go and get training in New York or California or Florida, and maybe even visit a college while I'm there, because I can kind of hit two things at once. How amazing is that? So I'm really thrilled about the Transition Hub, and connecting with so many folks as we did early in the spring was just outstanding. It was great to hear, and I know there are more programs out there. So I'm going to clone myself right now, and we'll get right to that.
And I think with this audience, Richard, you know, we don't have to sell this concept, but I do think there are so many families and individuals who have not had the opportunity for the kind of exposure to independence and functioning as an independent blind person that comes from some of these transition programs as you get ready for college or as you get ready for the workforce. Moving out of high school, where you're kind of sheltered and protected, no matter what, really. I mean, you know, best school or not best school, you're kind of in a sheltered and protected environment. And all of a sudden you're shoved in this environment where you're on your own. You've got to figure out everything from food to laundry to transportation to getting access to materials and information, often without a lot of support or with minimal support. And I think these programs really kind of help provide that bridge. And I even for me, I know that would have been a helpful thing to have.
They weren't around 30 years ago when I graduated high school. And other than the summer camps that I went to, which were great, and you had some leadership experience, I really didn't get prepared for college. So as I grew into this field, I said, you know, these are where their needs are. And working in the field of transition for over 20 years, Paul, has just been hope. It provides a lot of opportunity that we know that we didn't get. That it's great to know that we can bring together these programs in one place and let people research them.
Well, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be wanting to hear from all of you. And I know over the next couple of days, we're going to be talking a lot about transition issues. And I'm looking forward to listening in on that. And I thank you for a chance to visit with you a little bit this morning.
Thank you. And I think, Olaya, we are at top of the hour. So I think, are going into a 15-minute break, and we just leave the room open. Is that how we do that?
Yes, we just leave the room open. Not a problem. Everybody can just mute themselves, take your break, and come back.
All right.
How long? How long should our break be?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
8:15. 15 after the hour. I'm trying to say that so we don't get
I know,
time
so we
zones.
don't get confused, right? I know. Okay, 15 minutes. All right. See you in a little bit.
Morning, risers. Great to see a lot of people I know and meet a lot of new people. Again, I invite you to reach out to Career Connect, to Olaya, to myself. We want to hear from you. We'll be doing a lot to engage our community in the coming future. But today is all about our national transition conversation and mentoring. We've got the folks from PolicyWorks, a whole 2 panels over the next 3 hours with another break at 30 past the next hour, 30 past 12 noon on the East Coast time. Steve, are you there? Good morning, Steve.
Good morning, Paul.
No, this is Richard.
Richard.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning. I just wrote Paul's name on my card. Good morning, Richard. I will go get a cup of coffee and wake up.
Yeah, no worry. Well, you're on the East Coast, so you don't have an excuse like I do. But I just want to say before I hand it off to you and the crew that we being the ConnectCenter, Catherine, Olaya, and I and others have been meeting with you and your folks since June to put together today's and tomorrow's topics. And I can't thank you enough, sincerely, for working on this with us, teaching us a couple of things along the way, and we're just so thrilled and excited to have you and your expertise and these brilliant brilliant minds with us this morning. So, you know, for students who are listening, teachers and educators and everyone else, thank you for joining us. Great conversations. This is a labor of love for all of us. And I'm going to hand it off to Steve to share with us what we're going to do for the first hour, the next hour on mentoring, peer mentoring. Steve, good morning and take it away.
Oh, thank you, Richard. So I'm just going to say hello and welcome and hand it off to my colleague, Derek Shields with the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. But I have enjoyed working with you, and I think I probably have learned as much about the APH as you have about mentoring work. So really glad to be here. It's been a lot of fun. Every Wednesday, you're my Wednesday morning. So anyway, it's great to be here this morning, and I'll hand it off to Derek.
Thank you very much, Steve, Richard, Olaya, and Paul, and good morning and good afternoon if we have anyone coming in from those European or other countries that Olaya had in our survey. My name is Derek Shields. I serve as the director of the National Disability Mentoring Coalition, and it's my honor to be with you today for the first session, and I have a panel of experts with me today. I'm going to provide some opening remarks, and then we're going to dig into this panel, peer mentoring, policy, technical, assistance, and program and service supports. And we really will look at the intersections of the Workforce Integration, Innovation and Opportunities Act, pre-employment transition service, and inclusive peer mentoring supports. And we brought together our panelists to examine those. Before we do that, if you're less familiar with the landscape of peer mentoring as a disability inclusion strategy, or just mentorship and inclusive mentorship, really as an inclusion strategy, I wanted to go back in time a little bit and tell you how we got to this point. So some of us were in the mentoring space about 8-9 years ago. And we looked around, we noticed that there wasn't a professional network of individuals in mentoring communities or in disability communities that were really working together to bridge this gap and create inclusive mentoring. There have been pockets of this work done through the Office of Disability Employment Policy at times. There have been pockets of work done in states and regional communities across the country, but it was really hard to support one another in a professional network. And so a group of us in December of 2014 established the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. And it's our mission to really raise awareness of mentorship as an inclusion strategy. And meanwhile, to also increase the quality and really the number of inclusive mentoring programs that are available to youth, students, and young adults with disabilities in the United States. And the reason we need to do this is because there is a mentorship gap. Our colleagues at Mentor, a national mentoring umbrella organization, identifies that 1 out of 3 youth in America grow up without a mentor. When I understood this was happening, I reflected back on my life and the impact that mentors had on me. I'm a product of junior achievement, and much of what I have to do today as an entrepreneur is related to the impact of the mentors that I had in my life when I was in high school. And yet I know that many programs are non-inclusive, and working in the consulting business of disability inclusion and employment support, I often wondered, why isn't mentorship our leading investment and leading strategy in the country when we've waited decades to improve employment outcomes? So perhaps our missing policy is in fact the most important policy, and it's the power of individual relationship. So the Mentoring Coalition, well, what do? You can learn more at disabilitymentors.org, but we do basically these 5 things. We drive awareness by working with groups like Career Connect and APH to close that mentoring gap in academics, employment, and really in independent living and community participation. We've built a national network of 300 individuals from nearly 200 organizations committed to the same common objectives. We have training and other resources available, and my colleague Kristen Humphrey will review the Disability Mentoring Certification Program that launched this year. We also run a recognition program. It's named after my mentor and Steve's mentor too. Perhaps you recall Susan M. Daniels. Susan, we have the Susan Daniels Disability Mentoring Hall of Fame to recognize what's working in disability inclusive mentoring. And last but not least, we run a fellowship program that really focuses on inclusive mentoring policies and practices. And we partner closely in this work with Mentor and the American Association of People with Disabilities. So that's what we do. And how does that bring us to this panel and today? Well, we did a 2-part series around inclusive mentoring and how could we advance that in the country. So back in July, on July 20th, we brought together in our country's, first time in our country's history, the Congressional Youth Mentoring Caucus and the Congressional Disabilities Caucus. Both bipartisan efforts working for the first time in our history to bring our mentoring and disability policies into alignment to better assist our youth and students with disabilities. In July, the Mary Gay Scanlon, the representative from Pennsylvania who chairs the Youth Mentoring Caucus, spoke to open up that event. And she really called for the establishment of a national paid peer mentoring workforce. Let's build a pipeline of employment that gives experience to individuals. And we all know that your first job leads to your next job. And meanwhile, those individuals will be instilling confidence in younger people. And these people would, of course, in a peer mentoring model, also have disabilities. That led to the establishment of our 4 policy and programmatic priorities. And I'll mention them here briefly, and Kristen will go into them a little bit further. Connecting with mentors, working with the National Mentoring Resource Center at the Department of Justice to elevate the awareness of the mentoring connector. How can people find mentors in the United States? And if you want to mentor, how could you get a certification? So you know you have evidence-based models in your practices. Second, connect with role models. Increasing the pool of mentors with similar backgrounds is critical. We see as individuals go into academics and into employment that they want to connect with people with intersecting identities, not just a mentor, but somebody that will understand my perspective as well. So we're working closely on congressional legislation around the Mentoring to Succeed Act and the Foster Youth Mentoring Act. And also, as Steve will describe along with Christine soon, making sure people know how to access pre-employment transition services funding in order to get more role models out there in the community. As I mentioned, building a peer mentoring workforce is our third priority, and we'll have plenty more in the panel on that. And the last one is to ensure that we have accessible e-mentoring solutions. Here, for those of you that didn't build this before the pandemic, we quickly found out that our community became the most isolated in the world and was more impacted by the pandemic than any other. And had we had more accessible e-mentoring solutions in place, that isolation could have and would have been reduced. So we champion that cause with the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Programs out of the Department of Justice as well. Those are our four priorities: connecting with more mentors, connecting with more role models, building a national paid peer mentoring workforce, and creating more accessible e-mentoring solutions. And with that, I'll close my remarks with a quote from Jim Langevin, the Congressional Bipartisan Disabilities Caucus has two chairs. Jim Langevin is the representative out of Rhode Island. He is one of those chairs. And he challenged us on July 20th to look at how we could close the mentorship gap through inclusive mentoring. And he said, close the mentorship gap working with Partners for Youth with Disabilities, Mentor, the National Disability Mentoring Coalition, and AAPD, along with our network of almost 200 other organizations, including APH, to expand the inclusive mentoring movement. The question we have is, how can we do that so once and for all we use the available funding in the country to impact this generation of youth and students with disabilities? Today, I'm joined by Christine Johnson, Steve Allen, and Kristen Humphrey in order to explore the how. Christine Johnson is Senior Technical Assistant and Research Analyst with the George Washington University Center for Rehabilitation, Counseling, and Research and Education. Christine works for the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the Collaborative, also known as NTAC-C. Christine will present first. She will then be followed by Stephen Allen, President of PolicyWorks, who Richard's had speak a couple times this morning. Steve leads PolicyWorks and the Peer Mentoring Works community of practice, providing technical assistance and peer mentoring program support to state vocational rehabilitation agencies and others serving youth and students with disabilities. Steve led WinTAC's peer mentoring workforce innovation pilot projects and other initiatives, all focused on the integration of mentor strategies with person-centered career development models. And after Steve presents, he'll be followed by Kristen Humphrey, Mentoring Director at Partners for Youth with Disabilities, and my colleague as the National Disability Mentoring Coalition's Program Manager. Kristen oversees all of PYD's youth mentoring programs and has been involved with serving youth with disabilities through mentorship for 15 years. At NDMC, she also oversees all of our programming to include a topic she'll cover in more detail today, the Disability Mentoring Certification Program. And with that, I conclude my remarks and I now offer Christine Johnson. Christine?
Thank you so much, Derek. And I'm very happy to join everyone today. I see that I have Steve helping me with my presentation, so thank you, Steve. As Derek said, you can go on to the next slide, Steve. As Derek said, I am with the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, and I'm doing this as part of the Pre-Employment Transition Services team from the George Washington University. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a bird's eye overview of pre-employment transition services and how it's done through the VR state agency. But I'm also going to remind you that a little bit later today, you're also going to hear from some states that have developed some strong partnerships in the delivery and implementation of self-advocacy and peer mentoring activities. So make sure you're sticking around for that. Next slide, Steve. All right. With the passage of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014, we now see this expanded focus on assisting youth and students to achieve skills and credentials to enter the changing workforce in our country. And specifically with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 as amended under WIOA, we now see that pre-employment transition services are written into law. And this represents the earliest sets of services for potentially eligible or eligible students with disabilities in the VR program. Pre-employment transition services are also short-term in nature. So they are designed to help a student with a disability start to explore career options and career interest. They are a set of specific 5 required activities that are provided directly to the students with disabilities. And also an interesting part of the law is that states must now reserve a minimum of 15% of their federal funds to provide these pre-employment transition services. So what we see now under WIOA is that the focus is on providing and serving students at a much earlier age. And again, this may depend upon each state's designated age range, but generally, let's say it's 16 and sometimes as early as 14. But they begin once a student with a disability requests or is recommended for one or more of the pre-employment transition services, and they have to be provided in collaboration or arranged with your local education agencies. So again, they're designed to help students with disabilities achieve high employment quality outcomes. All right, so what are these 5 required activities? Must be made available by the state VR agency to all students with disabilities who need them and request them are the following. 1 is job exploration counseling. 2, work-based learning experiences. This can include in-school or after-school opportunities or any experience outside of a traditional school setting, so including internships. And they must be provided in an integrated environment in the community to the maximum extent possible. These can also be paid or unpaid work-based learning experiences. The 3rd one is counseling on opportunities for enrollment in either comprehensive transition or post-secondary educational programs at institutions of higher education. Number 4, workplace readiness training. So that's to develop those social skills, employment skills, and independent living. And number 5 is instruction in self-advocacy, which may include peer mentoring, including peer mentoring from individuals with disabilities working in competitive integrated employment. And so each of the state VR agencies are responsible for determining how they are going to provide each of the 5 required pre-employment transition services in their respective states. So as you can see, the law really has the specificity on what the students with disabilities need. So as we look at these 5 required pre-employment transition services, what are the benefits of having peer mentoring? So, mentoring can be used as a strategy to deliver any of the 5 required pre-employment transition services activities.
Hold on a second. I think somebody's unmuted our panelists and it's interfering. Okay.
Thank you. Especially,
I think, Christine, I think your microphone is rubbing up against something because it's sounding really scratchy.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry for that.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
So again, specifically when we're looking at self-advocacy, one of the benefits is just that mentoring relationship. And recently there was a webinar where we heard from mentors and their mentees. And I heard a young lady speak about her experiences. And the quote that she said is just really powerful. She said, "If you can see it, you can be it." So in other words, if you can hear from someone like yourself, somebody who's mentoring relationships improve students' ability to advocate for their own needs. It contributes to positive self-esteem, and it helps them to identify realistic career and academic goals. And the research also indicates that peer mentoring is especially effective in helping students with disabilities transition from into the workplace and adulthood by improving those post-school outcomes for students with disabilities, because they stay in school, and that promotes high school completion. And they're going to have higher expectations for themselves afterwards. And it also promotes linkages to post-school services and supports and self-determination. Peer mentoring also encourages and supports student engagement and meaningful participation in pre-employment transition services. Next slide. So let's look at a few of the key components of a peer mentoring program for the delivery of pre-employment transition services. So first off, we want to ensure that peer mentoring activities supplement and do not supplant any of the school-based IDEA transition services. So again, the state DR agency does this in collaboration with the local education agency. So they're meant to enhance what's happening at the school. These mentoring activities also need to be coordinated with a student's IEP or 504 plan and or their VR individualized plan for employment or IPE when applicable. Another key component is that you recruit and hire peer mentors that are close in age so that they can relate to the students that they're going to be mentoring. And you want to make sure that there's a flexibility to work with these students a minimum set of hours per week so that you have a consistent and a lot more increased opportunity to build that relationship, because a peer mentor and the mentee, that relationship needs to be built on a mutual respect and trust in order to be effective. You also want to select a peer mentor coordinator for the program. So tasks that the peer mentor coordinator might have for the program is maybe identifying potential peer mentors and mentees to participate in the program, so helping that match, providing some ongoing and structured guidance and supervision to the peer mentors, conducting those monthly check-ins with students to find out how is it going for them, having that oversight of the program, and then of course having to do any kind of monthly or summary progress reports. So when we're looking at reporting, you want to make sure that you've got a reporting process and that you have measures to look at how a student is progressing towards their identified goals and activities. Next slide. So at a minimum, we want a peer mentor to be able to facilitate the communication with teachers and school staff, maybe a potential employer, a post-secondary institute of higher education, with parents. They also want to be able to guide mentees on how to request accommodations for themselves. You want that peer mentor to model self-advocacy and show the mentee how to participate in that individualized education program at school. Also to maintain, the peer mentor is going to maintain that ongoing encouragement and motivation for that mentee to reach those goals that they've identified. Also to encourage them to take part in school and community activities to the extent that they can, and to maintain confidentiality in the mentoring relationship, and again, act as a role model for self-determination. So you want to make sure that there's timely contact with a peer mentor coordinated as needed, so that when there may be a mentee at risk or if that mentee needs additional support and assistance beyond peer mentoring, that's taken care of. Next slide. Here are a few examples, certainly not an exhaustive list, for examples for each of the 5 required pre-employment services. So under job exploration counseling, a peer mentor can help a student identify their interest and maybe look at some career possibilities, look at their interest in relationship to a career pathway. So what it might look like down the road, and what are those local labor market indicators and occupations, and helping them to attend career fairs. Counseling on opportunities for enrollment in post-secondary programs. Again, a mentor can help them with connecting them to the resources and supports that they're going to need in order to apply for college, to get services from a disability support office, identifying the transportation options for further training needs, and also being able to explore the campus and what's offered for them as far as clubs and organizations. Next slide. So when we, yes, next slide. Okay, so instruction and self-advocacy. Again, we spoke about this, learning about their rights and responsibilities, helping them make their own medical appointments, how to get their school books, say, in an alternative format in college. Again, requesting any services and supports in a workplace and working on leadership skills. And under workplace readiness training, helping that student understand an employer's expectations, what they're going to need to do on the job, what documents they need when they are going to apply for a job, and again, independent living skills, improving those and helping them understand financial literacy. Next slide. The next few slides speak directly to how to use that 15% reserve funds that I spoke about for the provision of pre-employment transition services in order to implement peer mentoring as an option of delivery for pre-eds. So you want to be able to look at how do you determine the cost? So we have a couple examples here. We look at a number of factors in order to determine and establish the rate. So a VR agency may choose to develop a process where those peer mentors can directly apply to provide the service, and then the state agency will have an individual agreement or contract with them. A state VR agency can choose to set up a fee for service so that they look at a rate that's consistent with their overall agency's rate setting methodology. And the VR agency could choose to sequence peer mentoring services, maybe in conjunction with other entities in the state. So for example, the VR agency may cover the cost of the peer mentor's wages, and then you have another partner, say such as your local education agency or your Title I youth programs under WIOA, so that they can cover maybe the cost of training for the mentors and other administrative costs. So again, each state has specific considerations and circumstances. So if you want to consider developing a peer mentoring program, I'm going to highly encourage you to discuss what it is you want to do and how you want to set it up with a technical assistance provider or with your RSA state liaison before you actually implement a peer mentoring program, so that you make sure that you set it up properly from the onset. And the next slide also looks at a point of distinction regarding administrative cost and purchase services. So under the state VR federal regulations, administrative cost cannot be charged to that 15% reserve. And so these are administrative costs are the types of things we generally think of as budgeting, accounting, monitoring, evaluation, looking at buying equipment, supplies, salaries, sometimes travel cost, et cetera. So 2 points of distinction. If you have a fee-for-service arrangement, that's where you may contract with a community rehabilitation program utilizing a fee-for-service rate for the provision of PREETs. You don't have to disaggregate those administrative costs to determine the amount included in the fee. But also the second point is that when you have contracts with a line item budget, those administrative costs in those contracts have to be excluded. So that would be, again, telephone cost, utilities, physical space, et cetera, don't count towards that PREETs reserve requirement. This was very high level. Certainly, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but we have time for Q&A afterwards. And again, the last slide has, again, our website for the NTAC-C, the email that you, so that if you have further questions, we'll be happy to help you with all this. So moving on, I'm going to now turn this over to Steve Allen.
Thank you, Christine. I'm gonna try to, I was the one delayed on presenting Christine's slides. So I need to close hers down and pull the other up. Give me just 1 second, I'll get started. Okay, well, thank you, Christine. That was great. It's a refresher from bygone days to hear you give that presentation. But so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the peer mentoring works and the community of practice and the tools that were developed through technical assistance agreements working with state VR agencies, a little bit about what a peer mentor is, and just give you an idea of some of the tools and supports that are available to help a VR community, and specifically how to train your peer mentor and peer mentor coordinators. So I'm going to start off with just going back to continue the conversation we had earlier today about mentoring and what is a peer mentor. Richard shared with us a lot of trusted, we consider APH and especially the ConnectCenter to be a trusted source of information. And so peer mentors are that sort of trusted source, or know where to help you find that trusted source of information. Mentors are, peer mentors are someone like Christine said, that are close in age or have a relationship of a peer, meaning having a similar disability or similar experience. And that peer is the person who encourages and assists a less experienced individual in whatever objective you are serving in the peer mentoring program. And maybe this is one of the key most important facts that we all understand. It is a reciprocal one. It means that the mentor and the mentee are going to benefit and grow from the relationship. And so peers are individuals with common characteristics, and peer mentors are individuals who share that to help and assist another individual to acquire skills, knowledge, and good attitudes to be successful. So the question goes back to, I think, what Derek talked about and others. It's the most efficient way of delivering self-advocacy skill, the traditional teacher method, where someone stands up in front of the room and tells you what pure self-advocacy means and tells you what self-determination means? Or is there a role for more experienced students who have moved through life and have acquired some of that understanding to work with through a relationship of trust and common perspective to support someone learning what self-advocacy is and applying it to their life? So that's the purpose of the peer mentor, and the evidence shows that when students do this, it promotes success. and effectiveness of peer mentoring. So it increases expectation. I think Christine outlined these developing those self-advocacy skills and building those networks and accessing those resources that are in the community. So VR peer mentoring, and that this, you know, there are lots of peer mentoring programs. They've been around for a while at various levels in small pockets and other agencies, but peer mentoring and the work that we're talking about here today is mostly around these VR peer mentoring. It's a support for youth and students in transition and young adults. So vocational rehab peer mentoring is a service or support that is used to help young people, students, do that transition, and even before they begin to transition, to prepare for that transition. So that's sort of the concept of the pre-ETs and regular transition services. But as Christine pointed out, it's important. It is the peer mentor in the scenario of providing this service through VR is treated in the same way as you would other contracted service providers in providing those pre-ET services. And as Christine said, there's lots of technical assistance out there to help make sure that you get those things aligned. But what is the impact? We're talking about paying a peer mentor, and the impact of that is we're beginning to build a peer mentoring workforce. And so there are individuals being hired by community rehab providers or local education agencies paid to provide the support to their peers, their mentees. And so as a result of that, we have an emerging field of practice, of a field of profession, or a beginning to the profession. So as I mentioned earlier, that both the mentor and the mentee benefit from the relationship. One of the things that benefits the mentor is they may have that first job on their resume and get the experience of being paid to provide guidance and support and learn and relearn and model the things that they are going to need for their own careers as they move forward out of peer mentoring relationship job. So we're real excited about that. This sort of turns things in a new direction for peer mentoring. And part of what that means is that when peer mentoring is done by our agencies, there are purposes for the peer mentoring. And Christine outlined both broadly and specifically what that is. Self-advocacy broadly, those pre-ETs specifically, and transition support, you know. And so it's a combination of all of those things, but you can understand that there's a new position. And the peer mentor coordinator, I see the peer mentor coordinator as being a guide or a mentor to the peer mentor, so that that peer mentor is not out there on their own, but they have the support of a trusted guide to help them work with and engage those students and youth, you know, independently and with confidence. And so that role of peer mentor is more than an administrative role, but rather a co-pilot in the mentoring process. And I think that thinking of it in that way will at least tune you into understanding that role and how it applies in a peer mentoring program in VR. I'm going to quit talking and get to some of the cool stuff that we've created at the Peer Mentoring Works Learn Center and the tool suite. But before I do that, I've had the pleasure of meeting a number of young people who are peer mentors and coordinators in the work that I've done over the last decade, really. And this young person that I met in 2019 was serving as a peer mentor in Florida's program. And this is a video that we got from her where she talks about the experience she had with one of her mentors. I do want to point out that when I met Winita Kumar, she was a peer mentor in the program in South Florida. And now today she's a 6th grade teacher at a charter school in Brooklyn, New York. And so we're going to share that story. Olaya?
Yes, I'm here. I'm getting ready to share my screen so we can get that. Go. Oh, let me. I'm gonna share. Okay, sorry, giving me Giving me some trouble here. Give me 1 second. Okay, I think you can see the screen.
Mentoring works.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
You can hear that okay? All right.
Win Kumar, peer mentor. Win, please tell us about your experience as a peer mentor and your engagements with your mentees.
So in my time working as a peer mentor, I encountered lots and lots of memorable students and clients that I worked with, all with their own interesting, engaging stories. But there were 3 in particular that stood out to me and still think about till this day. I'll start off by talking about the first student that I worked with. We'll call him Anthony. And working with this mentee, I quickly understood my role as a peer mentor and not just as a support for these students. It was not solely based on connecting them to outside resources, but making sure that they were engaging with these services as well in a very independent way. This being said, when I worked with Anthony, we had begun working on his VR referral, and he was very gung-ho about pursuing a career and just getting into the job force. And I was all the more eager to help him do so. It was not until we started working on his resume that I noted that he was a straight A student in high school. And I asked him if he ever thought about pursuing higher education and if he had any passions or interests that we can promote and foster this growth towards this direction. And he mentioned to me that he applied to a community college. He did not feel that he got the right support and the right accommodations at the time, and did not know that at 18, there was no carrying over of these accommodations. It was at that time that we decided to go back to that community college that did kick him out. And we sat down with the Disability Services Office, with the administration office, and with financial aid. And I myself wrote 2 letters of recommendation over the course of 5 months and countless phone calls and meetings. We were able to get him readmitted into this program with full accommodations, with his full financial aid back to support him in this academic journey, which only further enlarged his passion for pursuing his career, which I always thought was very, very inspiring. In that time, Anthony taught me more than I hopefully helped him learn, but more so about the power of patience and persistence. Seeing him in our weekly, sometimes twice a week sessions, telling me that he can't wait to hear back from certain people and, eager to look at emails and ready to make phone calls. And that transition from the beginning of working with him to the end of it and seeing him re-enrolled in college was all the more inspiring. Now, when I think of other mentees, they're not all pursuing higher education at this time in their life. I worked with—
Okay, you can stop there, Olaya.
Okay. You want me to stop sharing it as well? So
yes.
Share. Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
I really appreciate that, Olaya. So as you can hear from Wynn's testimony about the work she did, that one engagement was so meaningful that it really made a difference in this young person's life and what they spent the next 2 or 3 years trying to do, or maybe their whole life. So these engagements that happen sometimes organically in our communities can use some support, some structure, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So PolicyWorks has been working in peer mentoring starting in California about a decade ago, and through those opportunities got a chance to be a part of the WINTAC, which was a technical assistance center funded by RSA. As Derek mentioned, we did some pilot projects with intensive TA with the states, supported by individuals like Christine, who are part of the PREETS team to help make sure those fee schedules and All of the dots, the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed. But in that work, we had developed, before WIOA was in place, we had actually developed a set of modules to provide training to peer mentors and peer mentor coordinators. And we're piloting that in Florida. And so through the WINTAC, we got a chance to move that project forward and continue to develop and use those projects in a laboratory where over a period of 5 years, we've worked with state VR agencies to help them build their programs. And that goes from, you know, starting the planning of it to putting it all in place and training the workforce, which includes those providers, organizations, also those peer mentor coordinators and peer mentors. And so the work that we did was really around making sure there's fidelity in the practice of this sort of profession of peer mentoring, or this job of a responsibility of a peer mentor. And what we know from research, and this comes from the National Mentoring Resource Center, is that clarity and predictability results from a clear program structure, and it does programmatic infrastructure increase the fidelity of the implementation. So to that end, the work that we did with the WINTAC was working with those VR administrations, working with those counselors and local education agencies, training student peer mentors, peer mentor coordinators, youth peer mentors, and the mentees. Actually, that second slide should say youth peer mentees. These are definitions, as Christine talked about. Youth are 14 to 21-year-old individuals who have disabilities who are going to school, and 16 to 24, those more traditional VR transition age youth from 16 to 24 who are not in school. And then the mentors, who are individuals who have that experience. So hopefully, as often as possible, we're hiring mentors to fill these roles, mentors that have disabilities that can share their experience with the barriers and challenges and the tools and resources they use to help overcome them in their own personal journey. So, and then the coordinators who are hopefully there behind them, supporting them in that delivery. So peer mentoring works. That's sort of what came out of the WINTAC and what stands today as a resource for peer mentoring programs, but specifically in this VR space. And in that, we talked early on about the Learn Center and these peer mentor coordinator and peer mentor training modules. Those are a set of modules that we'll describe, and then we're going to describe and spend some time talking about a couple of tools, sort of the technical assistant, and then the resulting community of practice. So the Learn Center are those training tools that can be used by a state to determine what they would like to deliver for certification. And they include groups of the fundamentals, which are like, we'll go over them in detail, but fundamentals, employment essentials, post-secondary modules, and program supplements. Here is a screenshot of the Yes LMS platform. And these fundamental modules include peer mentoring essentials, the role of self-advocacy and self-determination. Obviously, that's at the very core of those pre-ET services. Disability etiquette, common communications essentials, guide to mentor communications. That's a little bit about how you frame your engagement and reporting back to your coordinator in a way that aligns with the impact you're having with the mentor, not the detail of the conversation. Time management, attitude and behavior awareness, decision-making, just some good common base mentoring modules. We supplement that with 3 employment modules, disability rights, disability benefits, and those transition services that part of which Christine alluded to in the last session. You know, what is the ADA? What is the local chapter of the Center for Independent Living? What are the laws about disability disclosure? When do you have to ask for an accommodation and let someone know? And all those kind of things. There are resources out there for a mentor to at least have access to some information about how all of that works as a part of the training was very important because of the work we're doing in the VR. And then these, we customize some state and community resources like the state VR resources. And one day I hope to build a module that would be how to use the APH resources. How do you connect to the ConnectCenter? What is there? What is in the National Transition Conference all about and conversation all about? And so that a mentor could receive training on the incredible resources, incredible trusted resources that are available in the APH. I throw a list of post-secondary. There are these and others and growing. This is not a finite, you know, the whole world of information is out there that can be a resource, but it's about trying to focus those resources and build this as needed. We mentioned disability self-disclosure and digital citizenship. ODEP, the Office of Disability Employment Programs, they have some incredible resources. How do you learn to use those resources that are outside of VR to support your movement forward? As I mentioned, we do a certification program with the states that we work with, so that when they complete the quizzes that are part of each of the modules, we create a certificate, and that can be used to document the completion of training and meet the needs of the VR program to signify that. So now I get to talk about something that I'm really excited about. Training, learning management, that's an accessible learning platform. I actually have individuals with visual impairments work with me on creating the modules. They use the platform to do that. And so we continue to look for opportunities to grow that library of training. But one of the things that we did when we first started was build a handbook. We found that most mentoring programs had handbooks, and I knew that we actually created one, drafted a really nice one. I actually got compliments from one of our providers in Mississippi about the contents. But what I recognized and was concerned about was that the mentor was out there in the field without that resource, meaning that this PDF was sitting on someone's computer and was, in a sense, inaccessible at the point that that mentor needed it as a resource. So to that end, we began to think about a service support field guide that was that handbook material and a growing list of tools and resources that could be at the fingertips of a mentor and help prepare a mentor for the direct provision of services. An example would be you're having some trouble communicating with your mentee. You remember that you were trained on how to recognize communication barriers. Oh yes, what was the tip that was given? Well, you go back into your field guide and you have that tip at your fingertips so that you can do it. But in addition to that, we're building activity guides so that when you're meeting with a mentor, you've gotten to know them. It's time to start doing some of the mentoring, and perhaps that includes some activities around learning how to network, or learning to ask for your accommodations, or learning to disclose, or any number of activities. And I look forward to continuing to develop those activities that can be used both in person, but as Derek mentioned, the potential of Zoom interaction like we're doing today, where you and I as a mentor-mentee could get together, review some material out there on YouTube and the ConnectCenter, and then have a conversation about how that tool can help in our lives, how it helped me, and then prepare a plan to how to learn to use that tool more effectively. So there you have really a guide to the direct delivery of the service that can be used as a tool, and all that becomes available in the field guide. They have their sheets and resources that can be printed out, and the field guide is customizable by program, meaning that we can work with a state agency or a provider and develop parts of the toolkit that are just accessed by members of that community. So there are all kinds of tools that have been developed. We look forward to developing tools. I look forward to working with more VR agencies, especially in the blind and visually impaired community, to support them. I will tell you in the next hour about all of the ones that I have worked with in the past, and we'll meet Dorothy. But these tools, and the coolest thing about all of this is it is an app that you can download from the store and go look at, and you can find out more information about that on my website. So I mentioned the activity guides, and here are some of the ones that are what an activity guide can do, and then some of the list of networking, disability disclosure, digital citizenship, are some of the current activity guides that are in place. I mentioned worksheets. So out of that field guide are any forms and tools that you can use, like a confidentiality agreement to support the program, and you can customize that for your program. So this all works from the field guide. So the ConnectCenter, which is the other part of what peer mentoring works, is really all of what I've talked about today in terms of the work we're doing, the experience that we have helping states get a peer mentoring program in place, and the process of onboarding it. You know, how do you build that network of mentors available to meet the referral needs of a counselor or a local education agency counselor. So it's about learning and designing that system and identifying what objectives that you want to have in your program. Christine mentioned a whole world of things, again, both kind of general and very specific, but you can choose out of that what you want a peer mentor to support and target that support to achieve specific goals. And that's how a VR agency works. So the ConnectCenter brings my experience, and then you know, there are other resources like the ConnectCenter and Christine, the Intact Collaborative, and other resources online as well. So the Peer Mentoring Works community of practice, I invite you all to join it. It is a community of practitioners that include a lot of the VR administration that are working to develop their programs. It includes some of the coordinators that are practicing in the field. Occasionally we have mentors join us. Often we have presentations from individuals like Derek talking about the National Disability Mentoring Coalition, or from Mentor talking about effective best practices. And we want to share our struggles and build this world of peer mentoring as a paid VR service for young people, students with disabilities moving forward. So to that end, here's my contact information. I'll leave it up. This slide, of course, is this slide deck is downloadable at the link that Olaya gave us earlier. So with that being said, I'm going to pass the microphone on to Kristen.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, we can't hear you, Kristen. I think you're on mute. Well, no, it doesn't look like you're on mute, but we can't hear you. Or can anybody hear, Steve, can you hear her, or is it just me?
This is Derek. No, I can not get Kristen's audio.
Me too.
I think, Kristen, I think you need to choose, go to your volume icon on the bottom right of your screen and choose the output you want for your audio. It's either plug and play or your system. No. Let me see.
If you have headphones in, sometimes you might have to unplug.
I was going to say you might have to You might have to call in with the Zoom phone number. Let me find that for you. And I'll put it in the chat really quickly. 1 second.
Derek, do you know any songs?
I'll just give an audio description. We do have a visual image of Kristen in an office, and she's
frantic.
We see her trying to talk to us. So she's going to try to connect through the audio.
I'm putting the phone number, Kristen, there, and I'm the ID number as well. Do you see the phone number in the chat?
She gave a thumbs up. She's now dialing.
All right, and it happens with Zoom. Every now and then you have to join by telephone while you're on the video.
So this is Derek. I'm just going to jump in, and I won't tell any jokes because I don't have any good ones. But we have Kristen dialing in, and the purpose of Kristen's presentation is to focus on mentor match models and the experience she has with a group called Partners for Youth with Disabilities, or PYD. PYD is where the National Disability Mentoring Coalition resides. We transitioned there in March of 2018. So we're trying to get her audio connected so she could share some thoughts from her experience working with quality standards inside of the youth mentoring movement, which there's sometimes not a lot of experience with the mentoring quality system in the country.
Kristen, were you able to join us by phone?
Oh, you might have to, she might be an attendee though.
Oh, yep. Thank you. Let me find her.
So it looks like we have successful connection. If we could flip her to a panelist, then Kristen will be with the rest of us.
I'm looking for her as an attendee. Problem solving at its best, right?
Real time.
Thanks for your patience, everybody.
Yes, thank you very much. Oh, no, that's not. That's Kristen Imbus. Kristen Humphrey. Let's see. No, she's not there.
Well, you would likely pick her up as a telephone number.
Right, yeah, as a telephone number. Okay. Christy, can you put your phone number in the chat?
Well, either the first part or the last part, unless you want 100 folks calling you.
Yeah, we don't want that. Just the last four numbers.
207.
207, gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, there is a call-in listener on 207.
How's that? Now let's see.
Test now, Kristen.
Unmute. Oh, hold on. You got to unmute yourself.
Oh, and the phone, it might be *9 or *6. Does anyone know out there?
Did you do it? The *9 or *6?
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yay!
Well, you're echoing though.
You'll have to mute your computer and then talk on the phone.
Can you hear me now?
Still echoing.
All right, let's give it another 15 seconds to try, and then I'm going to offer a secondary solution here.
Okay.
I think yeah, so Kristen, what I'm going to ask you to do is bring up your slides, and I'm going to do the best job that I can to provide your pitch in a short amount of time, and I'd ask you to provide some comments in chat. You can continue to troubleshoot this, but
Perfect.
we want to make sure we move. So Kristen has now pulled up her slides, and although I'm not Kristen, I have the opportunity to have worked for several years closely with Kristen and have worked with Partners for PYD for about 5 years. And I'll provide some content for you. So PYD is, the mission is to create a world where young people with disabilities can lead self-determined lives filled with dignity, pride, and purpose. So go ahead to the next slide. PYD created this mentoring program back in, I believe, 1985, and has now been providing mentoring for youth with disabilities consistently since then. And really the model comes across as providing mentorship to connect community and drive community participation in careers to try to have a whole sense of participation and belonging. And this is removing stigma and fear and isolation. And it's been working through the PYD mentor match model, as I said, since 1985. Next slide. Yeah, so really how this is done is through programs, one-to-one mentoring, career readiness models, e-mentoring programs, like a national e-mentoring platform, access to theater or theater arts mentoring, inclusion training, participation in running the Massachusetts Youth Leadership Forum, and a new program that they have at PYD called Young Leaders Rising. So these are the different program offerings. And on the next slide, there's a focus on Project Lens. And this Lens stands for Linking Expertise and Networking for Success. And this is a unique partnership between the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind and their consumers. It's a virtual mentoring platform setup that gets one-to-one connection. And PYD facilitates that in a partnership with Project Lens. And they match transition age youth who are blind or have low vision with a caring adult mentor who's also blind or low vision. And, you know, one of the questions in chat earlier was, well, what's a role model versus a mentor? And in this case, we're getting youth who are blind or low vision with a caring adult mentor who happens to also be a role model with a similar blind or low vision identity. This matches work on personal and or career goals together, and they partner up for about 4 to 6 hours a month over the course of a year. Last, matches have access to monthly career readiness webinars, and that kind of is a supporting tool in the relationship. It gives them something to talk about as well. And I'll just note that Project Lens and the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind were inducted into the National Disability Hall of Fame for this model. Next slide. Here's a testimonial from a mentor in the program. I think so often, I know for myself when I was just starting out and thinking about employment and career, there wasn't a lot of guidance. And there wasn't a lot of guidance because there was a perception that as a person who is blind, we're not quite sure what you're going to do concerning employment. No one took the time to sit down and say, let me talk to you about what it could mean to be employed and what some of your options are. So I'm excited that I have this opportunity to meet my mentee and to be proud of her and for this opportunity to be involved in somebody's life. And that's from Len's mentor. Next slide. So at PYD, there's a variety of outcomes because they've been tracking this closely for a long time. And the youth that participate in PYD mentoring programs are excited for school, know more about career options, and they find confidence in their voice and really gaining a supportive community like infrastructure in their life. Next slide. And specifically, 79% of the outcomes had a positive view of themselves and learned about community events. 85% learned how to be a better listener. 80% learned how to compromise better. And 71% learned about resources to grow in their independence. Next slide. So there's some data here on the benefits of mentoring, specifically the Department of Labor recognizing it's one of the most important strategies for assisting youth in making a positive transition, and through the Massachusetts Mentoring Partnership, asserting that every dollar invested in effective mentoring programs, there's a return of $2.72. So what we spend early on saves us downstream. And I've seen other figures over the course of someone's lifetime. For every dollar spent, we're saving $9 as a nation. And yet many of us still don't invest in mentoring, not as a strategy for inclusion, but also a saving strategy. Next slide. And we have some more benefits data here. 76% of at-risk young adults with a mentor aspired to enroll in and graduate from college, compared to 56% of those without a mentor. Next, 45% of at-risk young adults with a mentor are more likely to be enrolled in college, compared to 29% of those without. And last, 48% of at-risk young adults with a mentor are more likely to volunteer regularly than 27% of those without a mentor. Next slide, and Kristen has posted in chat, that's from a national study done by Mentor National. You could locate that at mentoring.org. Speaking of Mentor National, they have something called Elements of Effective Practice. And when we think about the challenges in designing and implementing and monitoring a program, recruitment, screening, training, matching and initiation, monitoring and support, and then closure. These are the consistent things. And the elements of effective practice that maybe Kristen could also find a link and drop that in, are really critical tools for you all in the design and implementation of a program. Next slide. And as I mentioned, 1 in 3 young people grow up without an adult mentor in the United States. And if we think about that in specific numbers, we're talking around 16 million youth will reach the age of 19 without ever having a mentor. And we all have the ability to do something about that and close the gap. Next slide. Kristen kindly included some slides on the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. This gives the background, which I mentioned in my opening remarks. And we have the 5 activity areas on this slide. Importantly, Kristen and her colleague Piper Solowinski launched the Disability Mentoring Certification Program this year between PYD and Mentor, offering youth mentoring programs in the US full membership in NDMC, and also a 4-month training program. Participating members go through a deep learning process, have online content and online exchange, focused on running a mentoring program to be inclusive of youth volunteers and staff with disabilities. Next slide. And in this, she has also included a slide on programmatic and policy priorities. I mentioned those at the start. And next slide. Last but not least, I'm going to close in this slide deck, which you can access at the link. There are some hyperlinks here. Best practices for mentoring youth with disabilities. Mentoring for youth with disabilities, a model and population review that was coordinated by Mentor with participation by PYD, led by 2 national researchers. What that basically said is we haven't been studying this long enough to know the real impact. And every time we design a program, let's embed more studying to show the actual impact. You can access a link to register for the Disability Mentoring Certification Program. Our partner AAPD is also providing a toolkit to support Disability Mentoring Day, which begins on October 20th this year, the 3rd Wednesday of the month, I believe. And last, Peer Mentoring Works Community of Practice, which is what Steve Allen talked about. So I'm going to stop it there. If we could drop the slides and bring back up our other presenters. I want to have Christine and Steve Allen and Kristen through chat join us. We're running shy on time. I want to do a time check with Richard. Richard, would you be okay if we grabbed a couple extra minutes, or do we have a hard stop in 2 minutes?
I'm fine with it, but Olaya, do we have any concerns around that?
No, I mean, you can keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, thank you. Well, what I'd like to do is give chance for our presenters to answer any questions from the audience. I know there's been some chat. I haven't necessarily tracked a specific question that hasn't been answered, but we have Steve, Christine, and Kristen with us. And it would be great to be able to answer any questions you have about either kind of how to qualify and get involved with PreETs, or in terms of the training and certification that PolicyWorks does through Peer Mentoring Works, really that community of practice. And lastly, from Kristen's perspective as a mentor match program. Any questions that we have, please drop them in chat. We'll be glad to have them answer. And I see Kristen's provided some resource links in the messages chat box there.
I'm working on that as well, Derek. So if anyone would like to reach out and find out more about the field guide or the tools, or talk about how we can work with you to support your developing a program and providing those resources, I'll provide some information.
There was a comment about the state deafblind projects can be a great support in this process of identification and co-training for peer mentors. And I completely second, third, and fourth that. I used to work for a state deafblind project, and the excellent individuals there, and co-training for peer mentors have a lot of experience doing that. So if we can take advantage of that, that would be great.
You know, when Paul was talking earlier, and Richard, about the job seeker toolkit, I would love to figure out how to build a guide to using a tool like that and make sure that that's available to the community that can make use of those resources.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Hey, so a question for Steve and Kristen through chat, if you like. What's one of the biggest barriers you see to people getting a real start to a program? I've seen a lot of false starts, meaning, yeah, we're interested in this. We can't quite figure out how to get the PreETs aligned with our policies or procedures, or we wanted to do that, but we couldn't find the right mentors. You know, any specifics that you would recommend about how to make a successful and lasting start to a program?
I would say just starting off, be patient, be intentional, and make sure to tell the story from the very beginning. Build that into it. Patient because it's going to take a while to develop the supply and the demand in the system for the peer mentor, but you've got tools to make that happen. You got resources from VR and RSA to pay for some of it. You have other resources that's brought up here, but then also make sure you capture the impact, because you want to feed back to those funders and those leaders that this tool is important and effective, and so that there are more resources to bring to bear.
Excellent.
On that note, I'd also, this is Christina, I'd like to just say that not only being intentional, but maybe even using your community partners to help you plan this, because we have some states that are wanting, they're starting peer mentoring programs for specific populations of students with disabilities. So that may be those students who are involved in juvenile justice or in the foster care system. And so making sure that you're talking to those entities in your state or geographic area and getting them on board, because it helps them with their outcomes also. So I think you'll find that by partnering with others in your community, you can have a successful program.
Super point. Thank you, Christine. So we have a couple comments or questions here. Let me just check them. So we have, has character building been a component of mentor programs? So this is coming in from Kenneth. Does anyone have experience with building character building in as a component of a mentor program? And Kristen, feel free to answer that through chat. I'll be glad to read that aloud. I don't know if it's an official program or if it's like building in specific characteristics, but that question came in from Kenneth. And then we had another question here from Janelle, or statement. In terms of mentoring program coordinator, is there any guidance regarding using VR staff as the coordinator versus contracting or using a fee for service for someone outside of the system? So,
sure, I can answer Janelle's question. I think it really depends on your state. Again, this is going to involve those administrative costs that you have to look at, that you may not be able to use the pre-employment transition services reserve fund for that. So it might be a little easier if you are contracting with an outside provider or with your, say, Center for Independent Living, to have them have that peer mentor coordinator. But Janelle, you know where to find us. we're familiar with you. So feel free to send us a direct question on that. But again, this is where the technical assistance provision and that we provide, and also your RSA state liaison and fiscal people can help you look at those implications and help you make that determination.
And as I mentioned before in talking about the role of coordinator, if you consider that role of a coordinator as being a co-pilot, meaning the time spent guiding is actually part of the direct provision of the service, is one way of looking at it from my viewpoint. And the other part of that is if you can develop tools that can be used, like to account for your reporting and to manage some of your administrative activities, so that that's just an integrated part of the delivery. And so as you think about building a plan, you're thinking about how to capture impact, how to use tools to enhance and make every dollar count as profoundly as possible in the direct provision of that pre-ed service. So Christine is correct in that the administrative cost specifically can't be provided.
Thank you, Steve. So just a couple final catch-ups with the chat. So Tony said, thank you, Olaya. I'm in Mississippi, but we as deaf-blind programs really appreciate you, your work, and that supportive plug. And Kristen responded to Ken's question around character building and answering affirmatively that self-esteem is often a focus of mentoring relationships, and that obviously it can be a cornerstone of character building. So we see that in a lot in confidence building and looking at self-esteem as the root of that. And we, PYD and NDMC recently partnered with a group called Give Beauty Wings, and the sole foundation of that mentoring model is to drive self-esteem in young girls and women with disabilities, women-led organization. And with that, I know we're over time. I'm going to wrap it up there and thank Christine Johnson, Steve Allen, and Kristen Humphrey. Kristen, thank you for battling through the technology there and letting me be your voice today. I'm going to just drop in chat how to get in touch with the National Disability Mentoring Coalition. If you're interested in joining our network, go to disabilitymentors.org to learn more. And thank you all for your work, not just over the next 2 days, but into the future to ensure we have more inclusive mentoring for youth students and young adults across the country. Back to you, Richard.
Derek, everyone, thank you guys for a brilliant conversation. You're hearing from the experts, you're hearing from brilliant minds. We have all these contact informations in the chat box, and we'll continue the discussion in about 9 minutes. So if everyone wants to take a stretch, we'll come back in 9 minutes unless there's anything else, Olaya.
Nope, 9 minutes sounds good to me. I'll just pause the recording.
Hey, Richard, are you still there?
Your program and what you would like your role, or what is your role, your current role, and how you were driven to be in this peer mentoring circle. So thank you, Steve.
Great, thank you, Cayenne. I'm really honored to be at your service today for this panel. It's great to see you up at leading the way. My name is Steve Allen. I am the president of PolicyWorks. I'm not going to do a slideshow for the next few minutes, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the work we've done over the last decade, specifically the last 5 years under the WINTAC. And I want to communicate how peer mentoring is both a support, but it's a tool. And as Richard and Paul were talking about floppy disk when I was a young person, that used to have a show called Gilligan, and we all watched Gilligan, but he had a Swiss Army knife, and that knife had a spoon in it and many other tools. And so the idea of peer mentoring being a tool, a support that can help and support a young person achieve their own dreams and aspirations and employment and independence is it's what it's all about. So as I described some of the programs that I've worked with in states over the last 5 years, I want you to keep in mind that these are just examples, and there is a frontier of new programs that can be created that focus on developing solutions for your needs. But in the work in the WinTAC, I got the opportunity to work with 3 states early on. Alaska did a university model. It's about post-secondary transition and about connecting those students that are entering college to the workforce system. They also had a summer program for youth that was also had peer mentors. And then I worked with Mississippi. In Mississippi are just a wonderful group of people that work so closely together. The Blind and Visual Impairment Agency and the General Agency are, I don't know, put together at the hip a little bit, right, Dorothy? Yeah, she's shaking her head. So Lavanda and the General Agency has implemented a post-secondary education plan where they contract with the Disability Services Center to provide peer mentors to students who are sponsored by VR as part of their IPE to just stay in school, to achieve that transition from that first year to that second year, and to continue on their pathway forward to get their degree. So I know that we're expanding that program across the state to universities and community colleges. In fact, I just trained about a dozen new peer mentors about a month ago through the platform that I described in the last session. And then the work that we did in Florida, and I won't go into much detail. I talked about Mississippi because it really isn't the story that Dorothy's going to describe to you. The work in Florida, Horace is going to describe. So those were the 3 early pilots. But I also had multiple conversations with states and continue to work closely with states like Maine, where they're using peer mentoring through their university and through the Independent Living Center to support students. One of the advantages of peer mentoring is it can provide services, especially when you use a platform like Zoom, to reach out to those rural areas and engage those young people. I work with Maryland to develop a system, a program and support for a program, the training for students in school, where the peer mentor coordinator was employed by the local education agency to supervise the mentors who were students with more experience. I am looking forward to continuing to develop other opportunities to create peer mentoring models. Many of the models that we've used have focused on the goal or the objective of connecting youth and students to networks, to those community employment and professional networks. And so in that endeavor, all kinds of opportunities to connect young people to resources exist within the peer mentoring activity. So I want to really sort of, I don't know how they say it in the business, but reserve my time for my colleagues who will talk specifically about the programs that they've employed, and let's hear how it's working. Thank you. So I think Horace is
Yes.
up, right?
Thank you, Steve. Horace, will you give us an overview of your program and how you were driven to where you are today before jumping into your mini presentation?
Sure. Thank you once again for that lovely introduction. And Steve, thank you again for inviting me today. I introduce, I am Horace Brown. Good morning to some and good afternoon to others. I am the program administrator for Florida's Youth Peer Mentoring Program. And what got me into this field, I felt there was a need. And I honestly think experience is the best teacher to learn and to gain wisdom from your experiences. So youth peer mentoring was gravitated to me once I became a program administrator, and I understand the need and the purpose and how effective it can be for those youth, even in transitioning, even into adulthood. So that was my passion, and that's why I'm here today. So I do have a slide deck. I think Steve,
hold on one second, Horace.
I have it up too, Steve, if you need me to. Okay, thanks. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I've been working with Steve since I've been in this position, but I wanted to start briefly about the history of Florida's vocational rehabilitation peer mentoring program. Since the inception of WIOA, we have been partnering with Steve Allen and PolicyWorks and providing technical assistance and training for our youth peer mentoring program. Back in 2015 is when we initiated a pilot program that was, we developed or we defined the two major roles that would be in line with WIOA as well as with our program, which is the coordinator and the youth peer mentor. We developed two training modules for them through PolicyWorks to have our coordinator and our mentors trained, and we pilot that in Area 5. I know you guys may not know necessarily what Area 5 is, so I'll explain. State of Florida is divided into 7 areas across the state for our service areas, okay? Area 5 in particularly houses counties such as Lee County and Collier County all the way to Sarasota County. Area 7, which is Broward County and Palm Beach County, are the other areas that were piloted for this program back in 2007. As we move forward to 2018, we expanded this project across the state and saw how effective these two areas were with piloting this program. So we expand the services across the state. At the same time, we developed a technical assistance model to help support this program to get it off the ground and running. And it still continues to this day, which is our community of practice, which we host monthly to provide technical assistance to both counselors as well as our providers in the field. In 2020, we modified this. Of course, we all know the effects of the pandemic, which had its pros, which was allowing us to expand the service delivery model of our services from being in person to both virtually and in person. So we developed this hybrid model that allowed our providers to provide services either in person or even after the pandemic, in person or virtually. And then in 2021, of course, we started to develop more of those resources and to modify our internal SharePoint website to help guide counselors better on how to utilize this service moving forward. So we do have a dedicated web page for them to use, and for technical assistance requests, they can ask there. So with our youth peer mentoring program, it is consisted of 4 to 6 months in average length. That time can be extended depending on the needs of the youth that are attending these programs. And we like to use the age gap of at least 6 years for pairing youth to mentors, okay? We felt the age range between the ages of 14, of course, to 24 is the maximum age range for our youth peer mentoring program. And we're hoping that this connection of them being age-like will help foster in those long-term community resources and develop those supports that they need in the field so that they can effectively transition if they're going directly to work, or if they're going to post-secondary education, or if they're going into a trade. As I mentioned before, those two components that consist of our program is the peer mentor and the peer mentor coordinator. With those two components as well, once a provider has established themselves as a youth peer mentor provider for VR, the youth peer mentor coordinator has to complete all components of this process. This includes the PolicyWorks training, which is a 5-hour virtual policy coordinator training, as well as the 5 VR modules that they take through Vocational Rehab rehabilitation to get them oriented to the service as a whole. Once they've completed those two components, then the third component with them being having to complete the 20-hour peer mentor training as well. The purpose of this is to making sure, because the coordinator is the person who's driving the wheel, in most cases it's the provider, is the owner or the manager of the provider agency. We ask for them to get familiarized with the entire process, which is why we make the coordinators go through all of the trainings necessary. Next slide, please. Now, our three service categories is the primary, these are the focus areas in which when we submit a referral to a provider that we're looking to build and enhance the skills of the youth that are receiving services. Of course, with our community service organizations, we want them to be able to identify with those resources within the community and be a vocal part of that. As you know, here in Florida, we have career centers, Career Source. We also have the Center of Independent Living, and we have those disabilities resource offices that are located on the college campuses here. And the focus here is, of course, getting them familiarized with these areas, and how this is done is through those monthly activities, which I'll go into more details in further slides. We want them to get familiarized with the resources that are out there. All right. And this does entail with them building those relationships and being able to self-advocate for themselves. Okay. And with the social engagement groups, and of course, as you all know, these things are done both virtually and in person. So building these relationships may necessarily start in person, but they can also continue to expand, and making sure with the technology that we're using that we're assisting youth in understanding how to build those relationships, whether it's through a virtual platform or in person. So with your social engagement, you have your Boys and Girls Clubs, your volunteer organizations and so forth, and you have those faith-based organizations. So those churches may play a part in those social engagement groups, getting involved in those areas. And then of course, lastly is your vocational areas of networking. As you know, popular websites such as LinkedIn, having a professional profile on Facebook and so forth, and engaging in the audience and understanding that you're not alone, and having others who have similar experiences as you and sharing them and building upon those to help you be more successful. Next slide. With this model, I'll explain this more in detail for visual purposes. This central element of this chart represents youth peer mentoring community-based service providers. This is the located in the middle of the chart, with one peer mentoring coordinator connected with a dotted line to 3 peer mentors who are working with a dotted line to the 3 peer mentors who are students from 4 to 21. As you can see here, each mentor can be assigned up to 3 mentees at a time. So, and as I mentioned before, we have taken into consideration with the COVID protocols, if virtual platform is used for these services, we do ask, or we instruct our community service providers to also include time allotted for youth if they're doing these virtually. So we do ask them not to extend no more than 2 hours in a session, and making sure that they have adequate breaks if they're doing that. As you can see coming out, as this starts from the peer mentoring service plan that's located on your left, a referral is made through the VR counselor that goes to the community provider, and then they identify the mentor matching component. Once the mentor has been identified, the services are initiated. Now, once the services are initiated, we have what is called a monthly activities report, where the community provider documents all of the actions that take place within that month. They also provide recommendations on recommended hours, or if the youth peer mentoring service needs to be extended, okay, in areas that they can work on. As I mentioned before, in the event if a youth peer mentoring program is finalized and you receive the feedback, that community service provider does have the right to ask to extend the youth peer mentoring service for additional months if they see a need. For example, in the event that the youth may have had a change in direction in what they wanted to do. Initially, the thought would be if the youth was interested in post-secondary education, and then they decide, well, I want to go directly into employment. So the focus may be different depending on the needs of the youth at that time in which they wanted to receive those services. Also, as you see at the, sorry, my slide, did the slide change? Okay. Also at the bottom, the VR counselor is very important in this process too as well. So in the process of them receiving services, although youth peer mentoring is identified as a pre-ed service, however, in the state of Florida, we recognize it as a traditional service. So therefore, for those youth receiving this service, we typically have them go through the traditional route of VR services because there are additional services they may need while receiving this. Additional supports, for example, a case in point, as I just mentioned previously, if the youth is interested in going to school or post-secondary education, there may be additional supports that VR may offer to help support them through their post-secondary education, as well as with youth peer mentoring. So in that case, having a traditional case maximizes the full extent of what the youth may be capable of receiving from VR, as well as their potential for employment. Next slide. As you can see here, we wanted to show you how well this program is doing since its inception. From the beginning, currently at this time, we have up to 47 providers, certified employment service providers for this agency. We have 68 out of total. We've had over 183 peer mentors, coordinators, and we've had a total of 68 current providers at this current moment. We also have 133 peer mentors with a total of 70 currently at this moment. And all of those, we've had a total of 250 youth peer mentoring referrals since our inception of youth peer mentoring across the state. Now, of course, with those numbers being taken into consideration, we've delivered over 25,000 hours of peer mentoring services throughout that duration of our program. And as I mentioned before, with the benchmarks, these are the 3 benchmarks that consist with our program. You have your plan and mentor assignment. There are 2 codes that are associated with this benchmark, as you see here, a Y and an E code. Y being those youth that are within school, E being for the code for those youth that are not in school. So we use 2 different codes for those individuals. We also, during this phase, we identify who the mentor matching is, and once the referral has been accepted, it's sent to the employment provider. Now, once the monthly reports are being delivered, they too also have an E and a Y code. Of course, we're looking for deliverables, what transpires each month with the youth and the mentee. We want a mentor in making sure that they are submitting those reports monthly and making sure that they're engaged with their youth and following those guidelines. And we have provided guidance, and we have technical assistance papers to help the counselors and the employment providers to ensure that they're giving us the deliverables and making sure that the youth have what they need. And then lastly, we have the final report that explains the entire service that was provided and any details on recommendations, what has been achieved, and moving forward with continued services. And lastly, as I mentioned before, with the service expansion, these are some of the things that we've done to continue to keep our process moving forward. As I mentioned, we have our monthly community of practice calls. The monthly coordinator trainings are offered once a month, and we do inform all of our counselors and employment providers of when these trainings are at least 3 weeks in advance. So we do keep a running log of when those trainings take place. We also offer programmatic technical support, and guidance and quick reference documents. All documents that are shared with counselors are shared with the employment providers for transparency to make sure they're on the same page and they're user-friendly so that they can share information back and forth and understand what is going on. And we do have assigned provider liaisons in the areas, in each of the 7 areas, to help assist with technical support, directly local technical support. And as always, thank you again for this time, and I'm happy to be here, and I'll turn it back over to you, Cayenne.
Thank you so much, Forrest, for your overview of your program and how you work with mentors and peer mentors and your mentees. So with that, I'd love to hear more from Dorothy Young about your program. But before you go into your mini presentation, would you please give us an overview of what you're currently doing and how you were driven to the role that you are doing?
Okay. Thank you so much, Cayenne. First and foremost, what I'm doing right now, I'm working on trying to establish a second personal adjustment training center in our great state of Mississippi, structured discovery on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. With that being said, I will say that I've been with the agency now for 21 years. I know I don't look like I've been here for 21 years, but you guys, I've been with the agency 21 years. And I started off as an intern and was hired on as a counselor for the blind, and went from finding individuals that were blind and visually impaired employment. And then I was promoted to the Technology Act program, where I wrote the first Technology Act grant, started a computer refurbishment program, the agency first internship program. So I've been around here in the great state of Mississippi, making relationships and breaking down barriers for people that are blind and visually impaired, but also for people with disabilities. So thank you, Steve and Richard and ConnectConnect for this opportunity. So I'm going to, if that's okay, Cayenne, I'm going to go into the our peer mentorship program in Mississippi. Is that okay?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
Okay, and I will give a shout out to several Mississippians that's on here, that's attending your conference, this national training conference conversation. We have several folks on from Mississippi, so thank you, Mississippi, for joining this conference. It's a great conference, and it's one that's needed, so thank you all for getting it together. Is someone going to share my PowerPoint? Okay, so this is our 4th year, you all, having our peer mentorship program here in Mississippi. And the reason why we decided to have our peer mentoring program is because, one, we listen to our students. And that's was the biggie for us. We listen to our students. And when I say listen to our students, we responded and paid attention to what their needs were. So as Steve mentioned earlier, we are in a combined agency here in Mississippi. And so our general VR program, Landa-Vialard Hart is the director of that program, they had a peer mentoring program. We sent out proposals throughout the state for a peer mentoring program to address those pre-employment transition services. And we got back some great proposals, but none of those proposals really met the needs of our students with disabilities that were blind and visually impaired. So by me working with our students and partners in the community of the blind, the students spoke, and they wanted a mentorship program with people that were blind, that had lived those experiences, right? And could tell them how to interact in certain situations. So we listened to the students here in the state. We did our research on what was in our state. Like I said, we had a peer mentoring program already that was at the local colleges, but it was not meeting the needs of our students with disabilities that were blind and visually impaired. And then I want to tell you all that we did some soul searching, right? Because each one of us that's on this call today on Zoom, in the roles that you're in, we want to make a difference in the lives of others. So when you're trying to, attempting to meet the law for your pre-employment transition services, we did not want to just meet those requirements, right? We wanted to really make a difference in the services that we're providing. And that's what brought us to our partnership with the NFB Peer Mentoring. One of the ways that when we made that decision on how can we expand the partnership, we had to get buy-in from our executive director, who's Chris Howard. And basically what I did was I went to Mr. Howard and I said to him, I said, you know, we have a proposal, and the students with disabilities that are blind and visually impaired, they want a peer mentoring program that had mentors that were blind and visually impaired. And we found that with the National Federation of the Blind Partnership. So he agreed to it. He stated that long as the services that was going to be provided was individualized and that it would be provided throughout the entire state of Mississippi. So any student that was blind and visually impaired would have the opportunity to participate in these in this proposal. You also needed buy-in from your community of the blind. When I say buy-in from the community of the blind, it's because you want your students paired with mentors that are successful persons that are blind. So we reached across the lines. Even though we partnered with the Federation of the Blind for our peer mentoring program, we reached across the lines to the Council of the Blind, our Mississippi chapter of the Council of the Blind, and they became mentors in the Federation program, right? Because when you take out the Federation of the Council, it's all about making sure that your student that you're serving has, and getting the needs that getting what they need to be successful. And then you had buy-in from the students. Now, one of the tricks that I use for buy-in from our students is that our first retreat here in Mississippi was a trip to Orlando, Florida, right? So our kids, for the very first time, got the opportunity to travel to the national convention to get those pre-employment transition services, right? And so I was afraid of them traveling. We purchased the plane tickets. We also rented a bus for some of the students and the parents with. We had several conference calls, but that was an incentive, you guys, to introduce this program to our students. And it turned out to be magnificent, right? Because those students, when they got there, they met other individuals that were blind that were successful. I had a student, and that student wanted to be an engineer. Well, at that convention, they was able to pair that student with the person that just so happened to be blind that was an engineer. Right? And so now they get to meet other people, successful people that are blind, that, hey, we can do this also. So the difference in your peer mentoring for me, in my experiences in our great state and working with the National Federation of the Blind for peer mentoring, and a role model is, a peer mentor is a relationship. Right? You're going to create that relationship when you pair that student with that mentor. That's creating that relationship, right? And it's with someone that has gone through similar experiences, right? And the key is to make sure that that mentor is available to create that relationship. And it also, on that slide that I had, is a soul searching thing. Your mentor that you choose also has to care about the person that they're going to be mentoring. Right. I want today's conversation, I did bring on a mentee and a mentor, right? Because I can tell the story all day long of how the Florida pre-employment transition mentoring program with the National Federation of the Blind was successful, right? I can tell you all, I can give you the data at the end of this PowerPoint. But it's also good to motivate my students that have gone through the peer mentoring program in Mississippi. Our first person I want to bring on is Mr. Cleavon Biggs. And Cleavon is in the business enterprise of Mississippi. That's our Randolph Shepherd program here. To give you a little background on Cleavon, Cleavon was born in Chicago, Illinois, moved to Mississippi when he was very young. He went to several schools before attending the Mississippi School for the Blind in the 6th grade. While at the School for the Blind, he was the student ambassador. He was the student council president during his senior year. He was also active in the band, wrestling at the Mississippi School for the Blind in 2014. He went to Hines Community College on a full band scholarship. He also attended William Carey University on a full band scholarship. Cleavon was selected as the NFB peer mentor. He was selected in 2019. He took a different career path, and now Cleavon is working. But I want Cleavon to come on and tell you how that process worked for just about 2 minutes, how he was selected and what how he became qualified for the job. And he will go over the application process and everything with you all. Cleavon?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Young. As she said, my name is Cleavon Biggs. Back when I went through the being selected for being a mentor, the application process was pretty simple. The main thing they really focused on is they made you do a background check. I was after that was approved, I was contacted by somebody in the NFB. I can't remember exactly who it was, but I was contacted by them. They asked me a series of questions about just basically the way I took it, just basically where my heart was in the program. Would I be a perfect mentor, role model for somebody who's basically going in the same direction that I was going, but just slightly different, such as like she said, the individual who wanted to be an engineer and they ended up meeting a blind engineer. After I answered all the questions and everything, they sent me a application to have filled out. It just asked basic information and showed you your background check was approved. It was things like that. There was no like real training, but the experience, I think personally, the experience that I've gathered of all the places I've been and things I've done, that was more than enough for them, I feel like. And that was that's pretty much the process I went through.
Okay, and so Cleavon, tell them about who you mentored and where that person is right now.
Well, one of the guys I had the privilege to mentor his name is Markel Goss. It's funny that you all mentioned that we're joined at the hip, because our blind community is pretty much the exact same way in Mississippi. Everybody pretty much knows everybody. So I just so happened to have one of my friends as a mentor, as a mentee. And me and him, we were already best friends in high school. Well, in school, he was a couple grades behind me. He always looked up to me in school. So it was quite natural that when he got into the mentee program, they paired him with me, and coincidentally enough, at the same time, I was going through the business enterprise of Mississippi, and I was doing my courses in the program. I graduated, and he asked me one night as we were talking, having our discussion, he asked me, what did I do to get to where I'm at now? And I just basically told him I applied for the program, I got accepted, and they went from there. So last year he recently applied to the program, and now he is going up to be a vendor right now.
Right. So Cleavon mentored his mentee, and that mentee now is going to be working. Cleavon is in our Randolph Shepherd program. He opened up one of our first micro markets here. So now the mentee is going to be in the same program with him. He's going to be now a taxpayer. So that's what that relationship, the peer mentoring program, resulted in for Cleavon giving back, and also for his mentee, now it's going to be a taxpayer. That's one of the things that we need to remember about the peer mentoring program. Our next person is Harley AC. And Harley AC, you guys, graduated from the School for the Blind in 2020. She started attending there when she was in the 2nd grade, and now she's 21 years old. But the most exciting thing I want to share about Harley is that Harley was introduced to Blind Inc. through the peer mentoring program, Maurice, and she graduated from there just on October the 1st, and she has been offered a job, y'all, in Minnesota. So you all can tell, and you can hear Harley's story on how our peer mentoring program is leading them to employment, right? So Harley, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can tell them about your experience in being in the peer mentoring program.
Yes, ma'am, for sure. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. So for the Career Mentoring Program of Mississippi, I got introduced to this program by a teacher at the Mississippi School for the Blind, Dr. LaShawna Fent. And she was a part of the National Federation of the Blind. And she asked me, was I interested in, being a part of their new career mentoring program that they were going to start up, in Mississippi. And I said, I'd like a little more information on it. And she gave the guy, Maurice Perret, he's a person that works at the National Center. So she passed along my information to him. And, he reached out and gave me a little more information on the program and what the different modules and things that they would be going over. And so I, told him, yes, I'm pretty interested in it. And he did like a mini interview, asked me, what I like to do as a career, and, do I want to go into post-secondary education, and, just different things. So he could match me with someone, a mentor that would be similar to me. I want to go into real estate. So he connected me with different people in real estate and just different people like that. And so I went to the program in Florida, as Miss Dorothy mentioned. This was our first, retreat per se, I guess. And so we all traveled to Orlando, Florida, to the National Federation of the Blind convention in 2018. So we went there, and, there's a lot of people there. There's a lot of blind people and a lot of diverse groups of people. And we had the opportunity to go to a lot of different meetings regarding college. And they have a program called NABS. And it's a National Association of Blind Students. So we got to connect with others, around our age. And Nebraska also had the same career mentoring program. So we got paired with them, in rooms, and, so we can network with others our age. And our mentors, would check in on us, and they would, guide us to different meetings that we wanted to go to. They would recommend different meetings, and we got a chance to, see different people's perspectives of things. And yeah, so also we would have calls every month. Mr. Maurice Perret and Mr. Anil Lewis, and they would oftentimes have guests come on our calls, and we would, go over different goals that we had and different ways of advocating. And Maurice and Anil, they would oftentimes, get others to come on there and give their perspectives, and we would have like an open discussion on the calls. And pretty much it would just like transition to other things. We would talk about, someone would ask a question about, job readiness. Someone would ask a question about, how to advocate for, services in college and different things. So, it was mainly an open discussion, and we would have Mr. Maurice, he would have a set curriculum that we were going to talk about each month, but it would wind up like that as he would present, we would wind up talking about, it would transition into other things, piggybacking off of the curriculum that he had prepared for that month. So we would do that. And also in Mississippi, Maurice, Mr. Anil, and he would also have someone else. We would also go to these retreats. He would do them quarterly. We would have one in the fall. There would be one in like the winter time and the springtime. So it would be a weekend where the mentees in the program would go to a hotel, either in Jackson or on the coast, or, in Starkville, somewhere around there. And we would all meet up, and, he would have a set curriculum that we would go over for the weekend. And yeah, for sure.
And so one of the retreats that she's talking about, our first retreat was in Orlando. The second retreat that we want to bring up is the one that they had in Pearl, Mississippi. Okay, and so they're at a hotel, the Holiday Inn, and they have all of the mentors there and the mentees there. Remember, our mentors are people that are blind, right? So I go over to check on them at the hotel. Because, you know, this is some of the kids' first time, you guys, being away from home, staying in hotels. So I'm a little nervous, right? Then, so I pull up, I'm turning into the hotel. And you all picture this. This is in Pearl, Mississippi. If you all ever wanted to visit Pearl, Mississippi, let us know. Steve and all of them been here. And there's a line of cars, you guys, that are just backed up. The light has changed green. I don't understand why no one is moving. You know why no one is moving? Because you got over 15 students that are blind out walking with their canes to a restaurant, and they're being led by Maurice and Anil in the back. So you got a whole line of folks that are blind going down the street in Pearl, Mississippi to restaurants. So you got people that's just at a standstill. So then I see the police coming because, you know, what's going on in the state of Mississippi, you know, with all these blind people out and where they're going. And so they was going to a restaurant. One of the retreats was they were going to a restaurant, and they had to order the food. And then when they come back, they had to come back and tell how the experiences was. So we get back into the classroom after they get through eating their lunch, and they don't know that I'm there, right? And so Anil and Maurice tell them to take out their journal. And then they start journaling, how did they feel when someone walked up to them and wanted to order for them? Or how did they feel when someone came by and just took them by the elbow to take them to the restroom? And they use those tools that they learned for self-advocacy, but they could be able to talk to someone that could give them feedback, you guys, that have lived that experience already. It was truly, truly a beautiful learning experience for me, because I was afraid to see all of my students out, you know, with canes and the cars backed up, and how they're going to make it to the restaurants, knowing that they had O&M. But it's a learning experience. You know, just because that you are blind does not mean that you do not have the ability to be independent and to live and go wherever you want. And that's what the peer mentoring program did for our students here in Mississippi. I do want to say that Harley was introduced to Blind Inc., the personal adjustments. She just flew home on yesterday from Minnesota, and she's going to fly back on the 16th, and she's going to start working there. But that's because Maurice gave her that information about Blind Inc., and to basically, if she wanted to live anywhere else, she could. And that's what we wanted our peer mentoring program to show. I will say that since 2018, we've had our program. We've had 15 or more clients who joined. Of the 15 clients that joined, we have 2 that had completed structured discovery training. We have 2 that are employed in the business enterprise program of Mississippi. We have 4 that are currently in post-secondary training. 1 that just completed an internship last year, 1 that's employed, and 2 that's graduated for post-secondary training and currently working. That's just the 2018 numbers, the data from those peer mentoring. Our next numbers state that in 2019, we had 6 clients. Of the 6 participants, 4 are in post-secondary training. Our next one for 2020, we've had 3. 1 is currently in structured discovery training, and 1 is post-secondary. And then we have this year, we have 6 students in our peer mentoring program. And of the 6 that joined, we have 1 that's a high school senior, 1 is being homeschooled, 2 that's graduated high school, and 3 that are currently in college. So as you all can see, peer mentoring truly works in our state. We want to tell everyone that peer mentoring, pre-employment transition services equals purpose. You're going to have people that have lived the experiences. It's going to give you hope, encouragement, hands-on instructions, hands-on networking, hands-on compassion is what you get from the Mississippi NFB Peer Mentoring Partnership. And it's going to give you clients, students that have more of hope, more of encouragement, more of hands-on helping, more of networking, and more of compassion. So thank you, Steve, and thank you to APH Career Connect for giving us this opportunity to talk about Mississippi.
Thank you so much, Ms. Young, and thank you to Cleavon and Harley for sharing your stories and experiences as well with us. And with that, I'd love to pass the mic on to Brianna Murray from New Jersey to share about her program. But before you jump into your mini presentation, would you also share about what inspired you to be in the position that you're currently at?
Yes, are you able to hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, I currently cannot share my video. It says that the host doesn't allow video privileges. I don't necessarily know that it matters though. You really just need to be able to hear me. So I guess I will just dive right in.
I just made you co-host, Brianna, so you should be able to share.
Okay, let me try.
I was having technical difficulties earlier. I had to get off and get back on. So now I have access to all the controls again.
Perfect. All right, so we should be good now. All right, I am Brianna Murray. I am the coordinator for a program called Project Rise. And I have a master's in clinical mental health counseling. And I came into my current position with some years of pre-ETS experience. I worked with South Carolina's Vocational Rehabilitation Department, then worked in New Jersey for a couple of years at another pre-employment program in New Jersey. And then I just began my current role with Project Rise in August 1st. So I've been with Project Rise for 2 months now. So I'm still a little bit new, but I love pre-ETS. Pre-ETS area is my passion. So I was really excited to begin with this role. Project Rise stands for Resilience, Independence, Self-Advocacy, and Employment. So those are the kind of principles that help guide our program. We use funding from DBVI, or our commission, and are run by the NFB of Virginia. So a combination between those two programs help structure our program. And our calendar consists of a series of virtual workshops, day-long workshops, and weekend-long experiences. So throughout the year, we alternate between those models to serve our students. And one of the huge backbones of our program are our mentors. We could not do it without them. They are really, really integral to our success. And students are paired with mentors during the workshops and during the group things, but that also allows us to do a lot of individual programming as well for our students. I want to start by sharing a little bit about the history of Project Rise. After WIOA was implemented, the former coordinator, Catherine Webster, knew that there was a need to distribute that funding. So she approached our DBVI in December of 2017. Kind of with an idea of this program and the high level thoughts, and they worked together to create the program that we have now. She gave kind of an outline of our curriculum structure, some lesson plans and things like that, and our DBVI came back with an agreement outlining 4 services for us to center our program around. At that time, self-advocacy was not included. A year and a half later, they did integrate self-advocacy as one of the core pre-ETS services that our program focuses on. Originally, there were no full-time staff. Catherine was part-time, as well as they hired someone to help recruit students. So they had a base of about 700 students in Virginia, and they cold called all of those students to try to get a group of students that would be interested in participating in the first cohort for RISE. The first group in February 2018 was 17 students, and they started the program together. Catherine served as the coordinator, and they had 5 mentors serving those students. Eventually, they realized they needed someone who was a little more analytical as well, and so they hired a deputy coordinator to help with some of the statistics and logistics and things like that. The first year, they had sessions February through June, and then focused on employment placements during the summer, and were able to have a couple of employment placements with students. In the second year of the program, the student numbers were extended. They had students around the lower 20s for student numbers, and they upgraded their mentors to 7. In addition, that summer, they hired a staff member to work and help with workplace placements specifically for students. So more students were able to get a work placement during those summer months. The program now, we are experiencing even higher numbers and higher numbers of mentors. Currently, we have 30 students signed up, and we are still steadily getting more students to sign up every day. I just did 5 intakes on Friday, so we're still getting more and more students. I am the first full-time staff. I am serving as the program coordinator. We have 2 staff under me, our administrative coordinator and our operations coordinator. So they're helping me with some of the administrative tasks and the logistics for things like our workshops as well as marketing. We have a team of 10 mentors right now who are working with our students, and each of them is working with approximately 3 students. Our calendar, COVID was a very interesting factor in everything. So we do have our virtual workshops integrated. And then whenever we have an in-person event, whether it's a day-long event or one of our weekend-long workshops, we're also offering a virtual component as well. That helps for students to be more comfortable in the current COVID situation, but additionally, it helps us get students from a wider service area. So when RISE originally started, it focused on Northern Virginia primarily, whereas now we can kind of capture the whole state with a combination of our virtual programming. Our mentors as well range all over the state. We have quite a few from Northern Virginia, but we also have mentors from other parts in the state so that they can reach out to their students geographically as well if the situation allows for it. For our students, they go through an intake process when joining the program, and that's something I kind of modified when I came on. So the students answer a bunch of open-ended questions, but I also added an assessment piece to our intake. So students complete assessments in independent living skills and self-advocacy, orientation and mobility, resilience and mental health, and workplace readiness. And they give scores in those areas based on different questions during the intake process. Then at the end of each school year, students complete a post-assessment so we can compare their scores from when they started the program to see where they've made improvement and where they still might need to make improvement in the future. Additionally, our mentors at the end of each year complete assessments on our students so that we can track mentors' perceived progress with the students, because self-reporting can be a little biased. So it's good to have that mentor perspective in there as well. We also do an employment goal setting exercise at the beginning of each school year. The mentors work with students to establish their goals, their strengths, and maybe the barriers that are there to completing those goals. When they look at the big broad goals, they break them down into smaller portions. And that kind of gives mentors direction on how to work with their students throughout the school year and what areas would be the most effective for them to work on. We typically have 2/3 retention between years, so 2/3 of our students come back the next year. Additionally, we typically have 8 to 10 students placed in jobs every year, and our numbers just keep getting better, so it's kind of exciting. A couple more specifics about our mentoring process. One really unique thing that I like that we do is we rehire our mentors each school year. Each time, mentors have to reapply, go through the application process, go through the interviewing, and get rehired. This allows us to make sure that we have a fresh pool of mentors that are excited, enthusiastic, ready to work with students. All of our mentors are blind or visually impaired, but they represent a variety of employment situations so that we can pair students with mentors based on employment goals, blindness goals, and different aspects like that. Once mentors are onboarded and they fill out all of the paperwork, they go through a 3-part training session. This year we did it over Zoom, and it was in 3 sessions. The first session was RISE specific. So we talked about the program of RISE, talked about the students, the calendar, different things like that. This year we developed a curriculum planning committee as a part of that first session. So mentors who are interested in helping me as the coordinator with the curriculum would have the opportunity to have an input in that and help design our workshops. The second session, mentors went through boundaries and that sorts of training. And then for the third session, mentors went through the really basics of mentoring, active listening, how to build rapport with students, things like that. A lot of the PolicyWorks training was implemented into that third session. And once mentors completed the 3 parts of training, they were given their student caseload and able to reach out to those students. We had our first workshop for this year on September 18th, was the in-person version. September 20th was the virtual version. So all students were able to meet their mentors as part of the workshop. And then they were able to begin meeting with them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis and working on some of their individual goals. Our mentors submit reports each month on the 25th so that they can give us an update on how the students are doing, and so we can communicate with them on how each student is progressing. Our mentors are paid. This is a paid program. This year, we were able to up the compensation to $200 a month. Mentors are responsible for completing approximately 10 hours of work, and then they receive that $200 stipend for their work. So it's not hourly, it's just based on them completing approximately 10 hours each month. We also pay for transportation for our mentors. So if they're coming to our day-long in-person events, or if they're coming to any of our weekend-long programming, we'll compensate transportation, because we don't want that to ever be a factor of, you know, why a mentor can't work with their students or be at any of our events. One of the cool things about our structure is that each of the mentors is assigned a mentor group. So that's a group of 3 students, and they'll do things within that group at the different workshops. So it actually provides an opportunity for multiple levels of mentoring, because we have the blind professional who's leading the group, but then inside the group, because our students are aged from 14 to 21, we may have a college student and 2 high school students. So they have the professional mentor, but then we may use the college student in that group to also share some mentoring on the college experience with the high school students. It allows for a really powerful opportunity to have that multiple levels of mentoring, and then to also have that group of peers in the program that you do things with your mentor as well. Each year we reassign students to mentors. So sometimes mentors will work with the same students if they're rehired from year to year, but sometimes a student's career interests may change, or they may have a different focus. Maybe they need to work on communication skills and soft skills more in the next year of the program, and there's another mentor that would be better suited for that. So mentor pairings can change up as a part of the program. Lastly, I, as the coordinator, open constant communication with my mentors. I've developed a mentor supervision group so that mentors can come to me between the workshops about once a month and explain how they're doing with their students, or go through some of the things that are maybe challenging them as mentors. And we can offer feedback as a group of other mentors and me as the coordinator. I think constant communication is really, really important, both between the mentors and the students, and the mentors and me, so that I can be there to help support my team of mentors and build the best program possible. I think that's everything. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to share Project Rise and to be able to speak.
Yes, thank you so much, Brianna, for speaking with us today and sharing about Project Rise and how you've brought it to where it is today. And to wrap up our panel, I would love to ask you all one more question, and we'll start off by Steve, because he inspired this question. If you could have an unlimited pot of funds, what would you do to improve your program?
I would, this is Steve, I would continue to develop some of the tools and supports that would make all these programs more effective. And the way that works is we really are a peer mentoring community, and that means these programs need to mentor each other. And so when Brianna has created a solution in her program, what application does that have in Dorothy's program or in Horace's program? So continuing to support that community and advocating for peer mentoring as a new support, but also learning from each other and continuing to grow the resources that are available to the community.
Thank you, Steve. How about you, Horace? What would you invest in your program if funding wasn't a barrier?
Well, for me, I think it will be some of the same things that Steve just mentioned, but it'll also be expanding just the marketing itself of peer mentoring across the state and the nation. There's so many valuable programs out there, and the word needs to be spread. I don't know what that may look like necessarily, but I think that will give us an opportunity to share and utilize these programs more often.
Thank you. And Ms. Dorothy Young, what would it be for you?
Well, what Steve and Horace both said, to expand it. Horace hit on a good point of marketing of that program, marketing of your program, branding your program. But I also would like to I think having our students experience different things like travel outside of the area that they're in, I would like to invest in some of those types of experiences for them, a travel experience, maybe a travel internship site or, different things like that. But I would want to invest in some type of experience that is not inclusive just in your state, to use those funds for that.
I absolutely love that, especially as a blind individual who loves to experience new things outside of where I live.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then Brianna, what about you? What would you invest in if funding wasn't an issue?
I love all of the ideas discussed prior from Steve and Dorothy. I definitely would love to see us work together more between programs and have travel experiences where maybe our programs could meet up and work together on a more national scale. I think would be really cool. But I think the number one thing that I would like to do is to give even more compensation to our mentors, because our mentors are really the backbone for our program and we are paying them some, but the amount of work that they do, the amount of passion that they put in and effort doesn't match what we're able to give them. So I would love to be able to compensate them even more for all the hard work that they're doing.
That's good, Brianna.
Awesome. Thank you so much to our panelists and for sharing about your programs and the aspiration of working together and networking and potential travel options for blind individuals and showing that we can go places and obtain employment. And I really do value how peer mentoring is a huge part of that. And thank you to Derek in the prior session for talking about how the federal government is starting to see this as a great option for people with disabilities and youth in general in transitioning, and how important it is to every youth who's growing up, especially to those of us with disabilities. So thank you again. Steve, did you want to end and add any end remarks?
You're on mute, Steve.
Oh, no, I said, Cayenne, thank you very much. You said it very well. But I think Richard may have something he's ready to say.
Oh, no, I thank you, Steve. Thank you, Dorothy, Brianna, all the panelists, Cayenne. Really exceptional stuff we've learned and conversed about this morning and afternoon for those of you on the East Coast. And I'm just more than pleased that this has come together and we've provided so much information for everyone. And guess what? There's even more tomorrow. So join us again at 10 a.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. Let's start over. And Olaya's like, wait a minute.
I get confused with time.
Right. And I normally don't. So yeah, get your cup of coffee on the West Coast, get your iced tea on the East Coast. Join us. We're going to do a recap. Steve, Olaya, and we're going to show a really cool video. And then we're going to jump into one more panel with Ann Kwong on even more discussion on peer mentoring and what agencies are doing at the local level, and just really good stuff. Bring your questions, bring your curiosity. We want to hear from you. We want to make this a real meaningful resource and asset to all of you.